The night air over the desert feels still and wide and endless. There is a quiet kind of silence here, not empty, but full. A silence that seems to stretch across the sand, across the horizon, and into the sky above. The stars rest softly overhead. They do not flicker sharply. They glow, slow and steady, like distant lanterns that have been burning for a very long time. Below them, the desert lies in gentle darkness. The sand is cool now. It has released the heat it held all day. If you were to walk barefoot across it, you would feel a soft chill, a calmness under your feet, as though the earth itself is resting. Nothing moves quickly here. A faint breeze passes now and then, brushing lightly across the dunes. It does not rush, it does not disturb. It simply moves, as if it has all the time in the world. And beneath this quiet desert, beneath layers of sand shaped by wind and time, there are stories, very old stories, stories that have been resting for thousands of years. They do not speak loudly, they do not call out. They wait, hidden, patient, as though they understand that time will return to them, slowly, the way the desert always does. Far in the distance, there are shapes. At first, they look like part of the horizon, soft, dark outlines against the night sky. But if you watch long enough, your eyes begin to understand them. They are not hills. They are not dunes. They are something built, something placed there long ago with careful hands and quiet purpose. The pyramids stand in stillness. They do not change with the passing hours. They do not react to the wind or the shifting sand. They simply remain, as they have for ages beyond memory. Even in the darkness, their presence feels steady, grounded, as though they belong not just to the land, but to time itself. If you were closer, you might notice how the stones hold the faint warmth of the day, slowly fading into the night. You might see the way the edges catch the starlight, forming gentle lines that guide the eye upward. But from here, at a distance, they are quiet silhouettes, watchful, patient. Around them, the desert continues its slow, endless motion. Grains of sand drift. Dunes shift by inches over years. The surface of the earth changes, almost too slowly to notice. And yet, beneath that surface, things remain. Hidden chambers, sealed passages, objects that have not been touched since the moment they were placed there. There are footsteps buried beneath the sand, footsteps of workers who once walked in long lines under the sun, footsteps of priests who moved in careful silence, footsteps of rulers who believed their journey would never truly end. All of them covered now, softly, gently, as if the desert chose to remember them in its own quiet way. Long before the night you see now, long before the sand settled into its current shape, this land was filled with life. Not loud life, not hurried life, but steady, rhythmic, deeply connected to the river that flowed nearby, the Nile. Even now, though you cannot see it from here, it moves through the darkness. Its waters slide quietly between the banks, reflecting the stars in soft, broken patterns. The river does not rush. It flows with calm purpose, just as it always has. In the ancient days, people woke with the light of the sun and slept when the darkness returned. Their lives followed the rhythm of the river, the rising and falling waters, the seasons that came and went without surprise. Morning would begin softly, a pale light spreading across the sky, cool air drifting through simple homes made of mud brick.
the faint sound of footsteps, the quiet preparation of food, grain being ground slowly between stones, a steady, familiar sound that marked the beginning of the day. Bread would be baked in small ovens, the warmth filling the air. There would be no hurry, no sharp movements, only the gentle unfolding of routine. Children would wake and step outside, feeling the cool earth beneath their feet before the sun began to warm it again. Men and women would walk toward the fields near the river, carrying simple tools worn smooth by use. Wooden plows, woven baskets, clay jars, everything made by hand, everything shaped with care. The soil near the Nile was dark and rich. When the river flooded, it left behind layers of fertile earth. This was a gift that returned each year, steady and dependable. And so the people learned to wait, to watch, to understand the timing of the water. They planted their crops when the land was ready. They harvested when the grain stood tall and golden. They lived in quiet cooperation with the world around them. The sun would rise higher, the air would grow warmer, the sounds of the village would settle into a soft rhythm, tools moving through soil, distant voices speaking calmly, the occasional call of birds drifting across the open space. Nothing was rushed, nothing was wasted. Even in their work there was a kind of stillness, a quiet understanding that life moved in cycles and that each moment had its place. As the day continued, the heat would deepen, shadows would grow shorter, the light would become bright and steady, filling every corner of the land. People would pause, resting in whatever shade they could find. The hum of activity would slow just for a while. Water would be poured into cups. Simple meals would be shared. There would be conversation, but not loud or hurried, just a calm exchange of thoughts carried gently in the warm air. And always, nearby, the river continued to flow. It was never far. Its presence was constant, a quiet companion to every part of life. But beyond the fields, beyond the homes, beyond the familiar paths of daily routine, there were places that felt different, places where the air seemed to hold a deeper stillness, where the ground itself felt older. These were the places where people built not for the present, but for something beyond it. Stone by stone, slowly, carefully, they created structures that would last far longer than a single lifetime. They did not rush this work. They could not. Each block was heavy. Each movement required effort and patience. But there was purpose in every action, a quiet belief that what they were building would remain even when they were gone. The pyramids began like this, not suddenly, not at once, but slowly over many seasons. Workers gathered, tools were shaped, stone was cut from the earth with careful hands. The sound of chisels striking rock echoed softly across the land, not sharp or chaotic, but steady, rhythmic, almost like a slow heartbeat. Day after day the work continued, under the sun, under the sky that changed from pale morning blue to deep afternoon gold. The blocks were moved, lifted, placed, each one finding its position, each one becoming something larger, something that would rise slowly into the sky. And as it rose, it began to change the landscape, not in a sudden way, but in a quiet, undeniable way. The shape became visible from farther and farther away, a form that stood apart from the natural lines of the desert, something made by human hands, yet meant to feel eternal. At night, when the work paused, the structure would stand in silence, much like it does now. The workers would return to their homes, The tools would rest, the air would cool, and the stars would return, just as they have tonight. The same stars, looking down on the same land, watching as time passed, slowly, gently, without urgency. And beneath it all, beneath the rising stone, beneath the footsteps and the effort, there were intentions, beliefs, ideas about life and what came after. These ideas shaped everything. They guided the hands that placed the stones. They guided the minds that planned the structures. They gave meaning to the work. Deep beneath the surface, chambers were created, hidden spaces, carefully sealed, not meant for the everyday world. These
Spaces were prepared with great attention. Objects were placed inside, not randomly, but with care. Each item had a purpose, each one connected to a belief that life did not simply end, but continued in a different form. And so the desert began to hold more than sand. It began to hold memory, not in words, not in voices, but in stone, in objects, in spaces left untouched. Over time, the winds moved, the sands shifted, the surface of the land changed again and again. Paths disappeared, structures were covered, slowly, almost gently, as if the desert was placing a quiet blanket over everything, preserving it in stillness. And so the stories sank deeper, hidden from sight, but not lost, never truly lost, because time in this place does not erase, it only softens, it only waits. And somewhere beneath the sand, beneath the quiet weight of years, those hidden places remain, still, undisturbed, waiting for the moment when they will be seen again, not with noise or urgency, but with the same calm patience with which they were first created. The night continues, the stars remain, the desert breathes slowly, and the secrets beneath it rest exactly where they have always been.
The night does not hurry. It settles gently over the land, just as it has done for thousands of years. The air grows a little cooler, the wind becomes softer, almost like a slow breath moving across the surface of the sand. The pyramids remain still. They do not react to the passing of time. They do not shift or bend. They simply stand, quiet and steady, as though they are part of something deeper than the land itself. And beneath them, far below the stone, there are spaces that have not felt the touch of light for a very long time. Hidden corridors, narrow passages that twist gently through the darkness, walls made smooth by careful hands, hands that moved slowly, with purpose, guided by belief rather than urgency. If you could move through those passages now, you would not hear echoes of voices, you would not hear footsteps, only silence, a deep, settled silence that has had centuries to rest. The air inside would feel different, still, undisturbed, as though even time itself has slowed down within those walls. Long ago, when these chambers were first created, they were not empty. They were filled with quiet intention. Workers moved carefully, carrying objects into these spaces. They did not rush. Each step was measured. Each movement was thoughtful. Torches would have lit the way, their soft flames casting warm, shifting light along the stone walls. The glow would have been gentle, never harsh, just enough to see the path ahead. The smell of the torch smoke would linger in the air, faint, earthy, and calm. In their hands, the workers carried items that had been prepared over many days. Sometimes the night does not hurry. It settles gently over the land, just as it has done for thousands of years. The air grows a little cooler, the wind becomes softer, almost like a slow breath moving across the surface of the sand. The pyramids remain still. They do not react to the passing of time. They do not shift or bend. They simply stand, quiet and steady, as though they are part of something deeper than the land itself. And beneath them, far below the stone, there are spaces that have not felt the touch of light for a very long time. Hidden corridors, narrow passages that twist gently through the darkness, walls made smooth by careful hands, hands that moved slowly, with purpose, guided by belief rather than urgency. If you could move through those passages now, you would not hear echoes of voices. You would not hear footsteps, only silence. A deep, settled silence that has had centuries to rest. The air inside would feel different, still, undisturbed, as though even time itself has slowed down within those walls. Long ago, when these chambers were first created, they were not empty. They were filled with quiet intention. Workers moved carefully, carrying objects into these spaces. They did not rush. Each step was measured. Each movement was thoughtful. Torches would have lit the way, their soft flames casting warm, shifting light along the stone walls. The glow would have been gentle, never harsh, just enough to see the path ahead. The smell of the torch smoke would linger in the air, faint, earthy, and calm. In their hands, the workers carried items that had been prepared over many days, sometimes many months. Simple objects, and some more intricate. Clay jars, sealed carefully, small tools, pieces of cloth, food dried and preserved, each one placed with quiet care, arranged in a way that felt meaningful, though not always obvious. There was no loud instruction, no sudden movement, only the steady rhythm of quiet work. At the center of these hidden spaces, there would be something more, something that held the deepest meaning, a place prepared for a single presence, a space that was never meant to feel crowded, but rather calm, ordered, and complete. The people who built these chambers believed that life did not end in stillness. They believed it continued, softly, in another form, not rushed, not loud, but steady, like the flow of the Nile, like the passing of the stars above. And so, everything placed within these chambers was chosen with that belief in mind. Nothing was random, nothing was without purpose. Even the way the objects rested, even the direction they faced carried quiet meaning. Over time, the final moments would come. The entrance to the chamber would be sealed, stone placed carefully, layer by layer, not with force, but with patience, closing the space gently, as if tucking something away, not to hide it, but to protect it. And once it was sealed, the chamber would remain untouched. Days would pass, then seasons, then years. Above, the world would continue its slow rhythm. The river would rise and fall. Fields would be planted and harvested. Children would grow and grow older. But below, within the stone, nothing changed. The air remained still. The objects remained exactly where they had been placed. The silence deepened. And slowly, almost without notice, the desert began its quiet work. Wind moved across the land. Grains of sand lifted, drifted, and settled again. Dunes shifted by small amounts, barely visible in a single moment, but certain over time. Paths that had once been clear became softer. Edges blurred. Footprints disappeared. The entrance to the chamber, once known and marked, became less visible, covered little by little, as though the desert itself was choosing to keep the memory safe. Years turned into generations, generations into centuries, and still the sands continued to move. There was no hurry in this process, no sudden covering, only a slow, steady layering, like time itself,
folding gently over the past. Above ground, new structures rose, others faded, villages changed, voices came and went, but the hidden chambers remained exactly as they had been left, waiting, not in expectation, but in stillness, as if they understood that being found again was not something to rush. In the quiet of the night, if you stand far from everything, if you let your thoughts slow down, you might begin to feel it, not as a sound, not as a movement, but as a presence, a sense that beneath the sand, beneath your feet, there are spaces that remember, not in the way people remember, with words or images, but in a quieter way, through stillness, through the simple fact that they remain unchanged. There is something gentle about that kind of memory. It does not demand attention. It does not call out. It simply exists, waiting to be noticed. Long after the chambers were sealed, long after the desert had softened the surface of the land, there were others who walked across this same ground. Travelers, wanderers, people who moved through the desert with no clear destination, guided only by the shape of the land and the position of the stars. They would pass by the pyramids, sometimes close enough to see the lines of the stone, sometimes only catching a distant outline against the horizon. To them, these structures were already ancient, already part of a time far removed from their own. They did not know the details of how they were built. They did not see the hidden chambers beneath, but they felt something, a quiet weight, a stillness that was different from the rest of the desert. They might pause, stand for a moment, let the wind move around them, and then continue on their way, carrying that feeling with them, without needing to explain it. In time, even more years would pass. The desert would continue its slow movement. Sand would gather in new places. Old paths would disappear completely. And the hidden spaces would remain, deeper now, more distant from the surface, but not forgotten, because even when something is buried, even when it rests beneath layers of time, it leaves behind traces, small hints, subtle signs, a slight rise in the sand, a line that feels too straight to be natural, a place where the wind seems to move differently. These signs are quiet, easy to overlook, but they are there, waiting, just like the chambers themselves. And one day, far in the future, someone will notice, not with urgency, not with noise, but with curiosity, calm and patient. A gentle uncovering will begin, hands brushing away sand, slowly, carefully, stone revealed again after so long, the air touching surfaces that have not felt it in centuries, light entering spaces that have been dark for ages. But that moment is still far away. For now, the desert rests. The night continues. The stars remain steady above. And beneath it all, the chambers stay quiet, holding their secrets. Not
The quiet of the desert carries gently into the early morning. Before the sun rises, there is a soft, pale light that begins to spread across the horizon. It is not bright. It does not rush. It simply grows, slowly, like a breath filling the sky. The stars begin to fade, one by one, not disappearing suddenly, but becoming softer, less certain, until they are no longer seen. The land remains still. The pyramids hold their shape against the changing light, their edges becoming clearer as the sky brightens. The sand around them appears smooth and endless, marked only by the faint patterns left by the night wind. And beneath all of this, the hidden chambers remain untouched. They do not notice the coming of morning. They do not feel the warmth of the sun. They exist in a constant stillness, separate from the passing of day and night. Long ago, when these spaces were first prepared, the people who entered them did so with a quiet sense of purpose. There were no loud gatherings, no sudden sounds, only careful movement and a shared understanding. Their beliefs were not spoken in hurried words. They were carried in small actions, repeated over time, becoming part of daily life. To them, the world was not divided into separate pieces. The land, the river, the sky, and the unseen spaces beyond life all felt connected. The Nile flowed not just through the earth, but through their understanding of existence itself. Each year, when the river rose and spread across the land, it left behind a layer of rich soil. This quiet flooding was not seen as destruction, but as renewal, a gentle beginning again. And in the same way, they believed that life followed a similar path, not ending, but changing, not disappearing, but continuing in a quieter form. This belief shaped everything they did. It shaped how they built, how they worked, how they prepared for what would come after their time above the earth had passed. Inside the hidden chambers, the placement of objects was never hurried. A jar would be set down, carefully, its position adjusted slightly, until it felt right. A piece of cloth would be folded, smoothed, and placed with gentle hands. Even the smallest item was given attention, not because it was valuable in itself, but because of what it represented: continuity, care, presence. The walls of the chambers were sometimes marked, not with crowded images, but simple, meaningful forms, lines that suggested movement, shapes that reflected familiar parts of life, figures that stood in calm, balanced poses, not showing action, but stillness. These markings were not meant to be decorations in the way we might think. They were quiet expressions of understanding, ways of holding ideas without needing many words. The people who made them worked slowly, each line drawn with care, each shape formed with steady hands. There was no need to rush. Time, to them, was not something that pressed forward. It moved in cycles, like the river, like the seasons, like the rising and setting of the sun. Outside, as the morning light grows stronger, the land begins to wake again. A distant bird calls, soft and low. The air warms slightly. Far from the pyramids, near the riverbanks, life begins its quiet rhythm once more. Water is lifted from the Nile in clay jars. The sound of it pouring is gentle, steady, familiar. Hands move through grain, preparing it for the day's meals. Footsteps pass along narrow paths, worn smooth by many years of use. There is no urgency, only a steady continuation of what has always been done. And yet, even as life moves forward, the presence of the hidden places remains, not as something separate, but as something quietly connected to everything else. The people did not see the chambers as distant or forgotten. They were part of the same world, a quieter part, a deeper part, a place where time rested more fully. As the sun rises higher, the light spreads across the desert. It touches the sides of the pyramids, revealing the texture of the stone. Small variations in the surface become visible, edges softened by time, lines shaped by careful construction. The light moves slowly, sliding across the stone as the day continues. And still beneath it all, the chambers remain unchanged.
The air inside does not shift. The objects do not move. The silence stays complete. It is a different kind of existence, one without motion, one without sound, but not without meaning. Because meaning, in this place, is not something that depends on change. It rests in what remains. As the day unfolds, the heat begins to rise again. The sand warms under the sun. The air becomes heavier, slower. Shadows shorten. The brightness of the sky deepens, and the rhythm of life above continues just as it has always done. But over long stretches of time, changes do come. Not sudden changes, not sharp or dramatic, but slow shifts, almost too gentle to notice. A structure left unattended begins to soften at the edges. Wind carries fine grains of sand against the surface of stone, smoothing it little by little. A path that was once clear becomes less defined. The land reshapes itself, not with force, but with patience. Generations pass, people come and go. Memories fade, not at once, but gradually, like footprints being covered by drifting sand. And yet the deeper layers remain. The chambers, sealed and quiet, hold their place. They are not affected by the passing voices. They do not change with the shifting surface. They continue, exactly as they were. This stillness becomes a kind of preservation, a way of holding on to a moment, not in time, but outside of it. And so while the world above continues to move, to change, to forget and remember in cycles, the hidden spaces below remain constant. They do not hurry, they do not fade, they simply exist. As the afternoon slowly begins to soften into evening, the light changes again. The bright intensity of the sun gives way to a warmer glow. Shadows stretch longer across the sand. The air becomes more comfortable, more gentle. And once again, the land prepares for night. The cycle continues, always steady, always calm. The same patterns repeating, not exactly the same, but close enough to feel familiar. And through all of this, beneath every cycle, beneath every change, the secrets remain, not lost, not hidden in fear, but resting, quietly, where they have always been, waiting without waiting, existing without needing to be seen. The desert does not forget. It only holds. It carries the past in a soft, patient way, allowing it to remain, undisturbed, until the moment comes when it may be touched again. The light fades further. The sky deepens. The first stars begin to return, and the land grows quiet once more. Just as it was at the beginning, just as it will be again.
The evening settles slowly over the desert. The warmth of the day begins to drift away, little by little, as the sun lowers itself toward the edge of the world. The light softens into shades of gold and pale amber, stretching gently across the sand. Shadows grow longer. The pyramids, once bright under the midday sun, now appear calm and distant again, their edges softened by the fading light. There is no sudden change, only a quiet transition as the land moves from one state of rest into another. The wind returns, light and careful. It brushes over the surface of the dunes, lifting the finest grains of sand and carrying them a short distance before letting them fall again. The movement is so subtle, so steady, that it feels almost like breathing.
and beneath this slow and endless motion, the buried spaces remain. But time, even in its quietest form, has a way of circling back. Not quickly, not all at once, but in small, gentle steps. The evening settles slowly over the desert. The warmth of the day begins to drift away, little by little, as the sun lowers itself toward the edge of the world. The light softens into shades of gold and pale amber, stretching gently across the sand. Shadows grow longer. The pyramids, once bright under the midday sun, now appear calm and distant again, their edges softened by the fading light. There is no sudden change, only a quiet transition as the land moves from one state of rest into another. The wind returns, light and careful. It brushes over the surface of the dunes, lifting the finest grains of sand and carrying them a short distance before letting them fall again. The movement is so subtle, so steady, that it feels almost like breathing. And beneath this slow and endless motion, the buried spaces remain. But time, even in its quietest form, has a way of circling back. Not quickly, not all at once, but in small, gentle steps. Long after the chambers were sealed, long after the people who built them had passed into memory, others began to walk this land again with a different kind of attention. They were not builders. They were not part of the old rhythms of the river. They came with curiosity, not loud curiosity, not restless or impatient, but something quieter, a feeling that the land held more than what could be seen. At first, their presence was simple. A few footsteps across the sand, a pause near a structure that seemed older than the rest, a hand resting lightly on stone, feeling its surface, its stillness. They did not yet know what lay beneath, but they sensed something, a quiet difference in the air, a subtle weight in certain places, as though the ground itself was holding a memory. Days passed, then more days, and slowly small observations began to form. A line in the sand that felt too straight to be natural, a slight rise in the ground that did not match the surrounding dunes, fragments of stone, worn smooth, but shaped in ways that suggested human hands. These signs were easy to miss. They did not call attention to themselves. They waited, just as everything else in the desert waits. And the people who noticed them did not rush. They moved slowly. They returned to the same places again and again, watching, feeling, allowing understanding to grow in its own time. When they began to clear the sand, they did so gently, not with force, not with sudden movement, but with care. Hands brushing away grains of sand, small amounts at a time. Tools used quietly, lifting and shifting the surface without disturbing what lay beneath. The work was patient. There was no need to hurry, because whatever had been buried had already waited for so long, it could wait a little longer. As the sand was moved aside, shapes began to appear. At first, only faint outlines, edges of stone, flat surfaces hidden just below the surface. Then, slowly, more detail. A corner, a line that met another line at a precise angle, the suggestion of an opening. Each new discovery did not bring excitement. It brought stillness, a deeper kind of quiet, as though the act of uncovering required respect, required a calm presence so that the past could be met gently. The air around these places seemed to change, not in temperature, not in sound, but in feeling. There was a sense of stepping into something that had not been disturbed for a very long time, and so each movement became even more careful. The sand was cleared further. Stone became visible, then more stone, and finally the outline of an entrance. Not large, not dramatic,
but deliberate. A space that had once been known, then slowly forgotten, now returning to the surface. The entrance did not open easily. Time had settled around it. Sand had pressed gently against it, holding it in place. But with patience, with steady hands, the barrier began to give way. A small opening formed. Darkness lay beyond it, deep and quiet. The kind of darkness that does not feel empty, but full of stillness, full of time. Before entering, there was a pause, not out of fear, but of understanding. A quiet moment to acknowledge that what lay inside had been untouched for generations, and that stepping into that space was not something to be done quickly. Then slowly light was brought forward, a soft glow, much like the torchlight of long ago. It reached into the opening, touching the edges of the stone, revealing surfaces that had not seen light for centuries. The first steps inside were careful, measured. The air within felt different, still and settled, as though it had been waiting, unchanged, for this moment. The walls appeared gradually in the dim light, smooth in some places, marked in others, lines and shapes that held quiet meaning, just as they had when they were first created. There was no sound, no movement, only the presence of what had been left behind. Objects remained where they had been placed, jars still sealed, tools resting quietly, everything undisturbed. Time had not moved them, it had simply passed around them. The deeper the path continued, the stronger the feeling of stillness became. It was not heavy, it was not overwhelming, it was calm, complete, as though the space had reached a kind of balance and had remained there ever since. Those who entered did not speak loudly, they did not move quickly. They allowed themselves to adjust to the quiet, to become part of it, even for a short time. Because in a place like this, sound feels different, movement feels different. Everything becomes slower, softer, more deliberate. The chamber in the center remained just as it had been prepared, nothing disturbed, nothing shifted. It was not a place of emptiness, it was a place of presence, a quiet continuation of something that had been set in motion long ago. And as the light rested gently within the space, it revealed what had always been there, waiting, without expectation. Outside, the evening continued. The sky darkened. The stars began to return. The desert cooled once more, and the wind carried on its soft, steady path across the dunes. The uncovering had begun, not as a sudden event, not as a loud discovery, but as a quiet meeting between past and present, a slow return, a gentle revealing. And even as these hidden spaces were touched again by light, they did not lose their stillness, they did not change in their nature. They remained what they had always been, calm, patient, unhurried. The secrets beneath the sand were not secrets because they were hidden. They were secrets because they were quiet, because they existed without needing to be known. And now, as they began to be seen again, they carried that same quiet with them, unbroken, enduring, soft as the shifting sand above.
The light inside the chamber remains soft. It does not push against the darkness. It does not try to fill the space all at once. It simply rests there, gently, allowing shapes to appear little by little. The air feels unchanged, still, settled, as though it has been waiting in this exact state for a very long time, holding its place without effort. The people who step inside move slowly. Each step is careful, not because the ground is uncertain, but because the moment itself feels quiet, deserving of calm attention. There is no need to speak. The space does not invite sound. It holds silence in a way that feels complete. The walls, now touched by light again, reveal more of their surface. They are not perfectly smooth. There are slight variations, gentle marks left by the tools that shaped them, small lines that follow the movement of careful hands from long ago. If you look closely, you can imagine the rhythm of that work, the steady motion, the quiet repetition, each stroke placed with intention, without hurry. The markings on the walls appear gradually. They are not crowded. They do not overwhelm. Instead, they rest in open space, simple forms that seem balanced and calm. Figures stand in still poses, arms at their sides or gently extended. There is no rush in their shapes, no sign of struggle, only a sense of quiet presence. Nearby, objects remain exactly where they were placed. Clay jars stand together, their surfaces smooth and rounded. Some are sealed, their contents kept safe within. Others show faint signs of age, but remain whole, untouched. There are small containers, carefully shaped. Tools, simple and functional. Pieces of fabric, folded with care. Each item carries a feeling of purpose, not in a loud or obvious way, but in a steady, quiet sense that it belongs exactly where it is. Nothing here feels misplaced. Nothing feels forgotten. Everything has been left with intention, and that intention remains. The light moves slightly as it flickers. Shadows shift gently along the walls. The shapes seem to breathe, not with life, but with stillness, as though the space itself holds a rhythm, slow and steady, like a quiet heartbeat. Further inside, the chamber opens a little more, not wide, not grand, but enough to create a sense of depth. At the center, there is a presence, a place that feels more focused, more still than the rest. It is not marked by loud decoration. It is not surrounded by complexity. Instead, it is simple, balanced, a space prepared with care. The people who stand there do not move closer immediately. They pause, not out of uncertainty, but out of respect. The kind of respect that does not need to be spoken, the kind that comes naturally when something feels whole and undisturbed. Time has not changed this place. It has only allowed it to remain. The objects have not shifted. The air has not stirred. The silence has not broken. And in that stillness there is a sense of continuity, as though the moment when the chamber was sealed and the moment it is seen again are connected in a quiet, unbroken line. Nothing feels lost, only preserved. The people move again, slowly. A hand reaches out, not to take, not to disturb, but simply to feel the presence of what remains. The surface of a jar is cool, smooth, unchanged. The fabric, though aged, still holds its shape, still rests where it was placed. There is no urgency to examine everything, no need to understand all at once, because this place does not reveal itself quickly. It offers only what is seen in the moment, and even that feels gentle, unforced. Beyond the central space, there are smaller areas, passages that lead to quiet corners, each one holding its own stillness, its own arrangement. Some contain objects placed in careful groups. Others remain nearly empty, yet not empty at all, filled with the same calm presence that exists throughout.
every part of the chamber feels complete, not because it is full, but because nothing is missing. Outside, the night has fully returned. The stars stretch across the sky once more. The desert cools. The wind moves softly, carrying grains of sand across the surface, continuing its slow, endless work. From above, nothing seems different. The land appears just as it always has, smooth, quiet, unchanging. But beneath that surface, something has shifted. Not in the chamber itself, not in the objects or the walls, but in the connection between what is hidden and what is seen. A quiet bridge has formed between past and present, between stillness and awareness. And yet, even with this connection, the chamber remains calm. It does not lose its silence. It does not change its nature. It continues to exist in the same steady way, holding its place, just as it always has. The people who entered begin to understand something, not through words, but through presence, that this place is not meant to be taken apart, not meant to be hurried. It is meant to be experienced slowly, gently, with the same care that was used to create it. And so they move with patience. They observe without disturbing. They allow the space to remain what it is. Because some things are not meant to be changed. Some things are meant only to be seen and then left in their quiet state. The light flickers once more, soft, steady, and the chamber returns to its deep stillness, holding its secrets, not tightly, but calmly, as if it knows that time will continue, that more moments will come, and that it will remain the same through all of them. Outside, the desert breathes. The sand shifts just a little. The stars remain. And beneath it all, the quiet story continues, exactly where it left off.
The chamber grows quiet again. The soft light fades slightly as it is lowered, not removed, but dimmed, as though the space itself prefers a gentler glow. Shadows return to their resting places along the walls, settling into the same still patterns they have held for so long. Nothing inside resists the quiet. Nothing changes its position. The jars remain. The folded cloth rests where it was placed. The markings on the walls stay calm and steady, just as they were when first made. And in this stillness, it becomes easier to imagine the hands that once moved here, not quickly, not with force, but slowly, with care, guided by a quiet understanding of purpose. Long before the chamber was sealed, long before the sand covered its entrance, there were days filled with gentle routine. Morning would come softly, just as it does now, the first light spreading across the land, touching the edges of homes, warming the earth little by little. People would rise without hurry. There was no need to rush the day forward. It would unfold on its own. Inside simple homes made of mud brick, the air would be cool in the early hours. The walls held the night's calmness, offering a brief moment of still comfort before the sun grew stronger. Hands would begin their work quietly. Grain would be gathered. Stones used to grind it into flour would move in slow, steady circles, producing a soft, familiar sound. It was not loud. It did not disturb the peace. It blended into the rhythm of the morning, as natural as breathing. Water would be poured from clay jars. The sound of it, gentle and flowing, echoing softly in the quiet space. Outside, the light would continue to grow, the sky shifting from pale tones into a clear, open blue.
Footsteps would begin to mark the ground, people moving along paths they had walked many times before. Each step familiar, each movement part of a pattern that had been repeated for years. Children would follow close behind, not rushing, not running ahead, but walking, observing, learning through quiet presence. There was no need for loud instruction. Life itself offered guidance, slowly, steadily, through repetition and example. Near the river, the air would feel different, cooler, more alive with gentle movement. The Nile flowed with calm purpose, just as it always had. Its waters carried more than just life for the crops. They carried a sense of rhythm, a reminder that everything moved in cycles. The people understood this without needing to explain it. They watched the water. They felt its changes. They knew when it would rise and when it would return to its banks. Their work followed this rhythm. Fields would be prepared when the soil was ready. Seeds planted with care, each one placed gently into the earth, not forced, not hurried. Time would pass, the sun would rise higher, the warmth would increase, and still the work would continue, calm and steady, hands moving through soil, tools pressing lightly into the ground, baskets filling slowly. There was effort, but not strain, movement, but not rush, everything done at a pace that matched the world around them. At midday, the heat would settle across the land, the light would become bright and still, shadows would grow short, and the rhythm would slow. People would rest, finding shade where they could, sitting quietly, allowing the body to cool, allowing the moment to pass. Food would be shared, simple meals, bread perhaps, and water. Nothing elaborate, nothing excessive, just enough, always enough. There would be quiet conversation, voices soft, unhurried, words spoken not to fill silence, but to accompany it. And then, as the day moved forward, the work would continue once more, always steady, always calm. This was the rhythm of life, not marked by sudden change, but by gentle repetition, a cycle that returned again and again, like the flow of the river, like the rising and setting of the sun. And within this rhythm, there were those who carried a different kind of responsibility, those who prepared the hidden spaces, those who understood the quiet beliefs that shaped the chambers beneath the stone. Their work was not separate from daily life. It was part of it, woven gently into the same patterns, the same slow passage of time. They gathered materials with care, clay shaped into jars, fabric woven patiently thread by thread, tools formed and refined, each one simple, each one made to last. Nothing was created in haste. Each item carried the time of its making within it. And when the moment came to place these items within the chambers, it was done with the same calm presence. There were no loud ceremonies, no sudden gatherings, only quiet preparation, a steady movement from the world above into the stillness below. Steps taken slowly through the passages, light carried gently, objects held with care, everything placed as it was meant to be. There was an understanding, shared but not spoken, that this work was part of a larger cycle, that just as the river returned each year, just as the crops grew and were harvested, life itself moved in a similar way. And the chambers were part of that movement, not an ending, but a continuation, a quiet extension of what had already begun. As the final objects were set in place, the space would feel complete, not full, not crowded, but balanced, nothing more needed, nothing missing. The people would pause, not for long, just a moment, a quiet acknowledgement. And then, slowly, they would leave, the light moving with them, fading as they stepped back through the passage, until only darkness remained, deep, still, unbroken. The entrance would be sealed, stone placed carefully, layer by layer, closing the space not with finality, but with care, protecting what had been left within. And above, life would continue, days passing, seasons shifting, the same rhythms repeating again and again, until, over time, the memory of the exact place began to soften, not lost suddenly, but gently, like a sound fading into the distance, and the desert began its quiet covering, sand drifting, layering, smoothing the surface, until the entrance became part of the land itself, hidden but not gone. And now, standing again within the chamber, with the soft light returning after so long, there is a sense of that entire journey, from the first shaping of clay to the final sealing of stone, to the long, quiet rest beneath the sand. All of it connected, all of it present, in a way that does not require words. The people who stand here now do not disturb that connection. They do not rush to take or to change. They simply observe. They allow the space to remain what it is. Because in a place like this, understanding comes slowly, not at all at once, but in quiet moments, one after another, like the steady flow of the river. And outside, the desert continues its gentle movement. The wind passes, the sand shifts, the stars remain, and beneath it all, the quiet story continues, unchanged, waiting, resting, just as it always has.
The quiet inside the chamber feels deeper now, not heavier, not darker, just more settled. The soft light rests against the walls, barely moving. It does not try to reveal everything at once. It allows the space to remain partially hidden, as though some things prefer to stay in gentle shadow. The markings on the stone begin to feel different the longer they are observed. At first, they appear simple, lines, shapes, still figures. But with time, with patience, they begin to carry a quiet sense of meaning, not something that speaks directly, not something that explains itself, but something that can be felt. Each figure stands with a kind of balance, feet placed firmly, arms held in calm positions. There is no tension in their form, no sign of strain, only a steady presence, as though they exist in a moment that does not pass. The lines that surround them are not random. They move with intention, curving gently or holding straight, forming patterns that feel familiar even if their exact meaning is not known. They seem to reflect something beyond the surface, something connected to the rhythm of life that once filled the land above. The people who created these markings did not rush their work. They did not cover every surface. They chose carefully where to place each form, how much space to leave around it. The emptiness between the shapes feels just as important as the shapes themselves. It allows the eye to rest. It allows the mind to move slowly, without pressure. In this way, the walls hold a quiet balance. Nothing overwhelms. Nothing demands attention. Everything simply exists, side by side, in calm harmony. The symbols are not loud. They do not tell stories in long, detailed scenes. Instead, they offer small glimpses, a figure holding something simple, a line that suggests movement but does not show it fully, a shape that feels connected to the land or the sky or the unseen space between.
These are not meant to be read quickly. They are meant to be experienced slowly, just as the people who made them experienced the world, with patience, with attention, with a quiet acceptance of what could not be fully explained. Deeper within the chamber, the air remains still. There is no shift, no change in temperature, no sound beyond the faint movement of breath. Even that feels soft, as though it belongs to the space for just a moment before fading again. The objects placed around the chamber seem to reflect the same quiet understanding. A jar is not just a jar. It holds the idea of nourishment, of continuation. A piece of cloth is not just fabric. It carries the sense of care, of preparation, of presence. Even the smallest tool feels meaningful, not because of its size or shape, but because of its place within the whole. Everything here feels connected, not through visible lines, but through a quiet sense of belonging. Nothing stands alone. Nothing feels separate. It is as though the entire chamber is a single, complete thought, expressed in many small parts. The people who once stood here would have understood this without needing to say it. Their understanding was not something they explained in long words. It was something they lived, something they carried in their actions, in their routines, in the way they moved through the world. They saw connections where others might see separation. They felt continuity where others might see an end. And so, the chamber reflects that way of seeing. It does not mark a final moment. It holds a quiet continuation, a space where presence remains, even in stillness. As the light flickers slightly, the shadows shift across the symbols. For a moment, it feels as though the figures move, not in reality, but in perception, a gentle illusion created by the soft glow. Then, just as quickly, the stillness returns. Nothing has changed. The shapes remain exactly as they are. Time does not move them. It only passes, softly, around them. Outside, beyond the stone and sand, the night continues its slow unfolding. The desert cools further. The wind quiets. The stars grow clearer, spreading across the sky in quiet patterns. The same patterns that were seen by those who once lived here. The same stars that guided their thoughts, their understanding of the world beyond what could be touched. They looked upward, not with urgency, but with calm curiosity. They saw movement in the sky, slow and steady, repeating over time, and they felt that same rhythm within their own lives. The symbols on the walls may reflect that connection, not directly, not in a way that can be easily translated, but in a quiet echo, a suggestion of something larger, something continuous. Back inside the chamber, the stillness deepens once more. The presence of the past does not feel distant. It feels close, not in a physical sense, but in a gentle awareness, as though time has folded softly, bringing different moments together in one quiet space. The people who stand here now begin to understand, not with sudden clarity, but with a slow, steady feeling, that this place is not meant to be solved, not meant to be fully explained. It is meant to be experienced, felt, respected, and left in its calm, undisturbed state. Because some meanings are not meant to be uncovered completely. Some are meant to remain, like the desert itself, always shifting, always holding, never fully revealing. The light grows softer again, lower, more distant, and the chamber returns to a deeper shade of quiet. The symbols fade slightly into shadow. The objects rest without change. The air remains still. Everything returns to balance. Outside, the sand shifts just a little more, a quiet movement that never stops,
never rushes. The surface of the land changes, but slowly, always slowly. And beneath it, the chamber continues to exist just as it always has. Calm, patient, complete, holding its quiet meanings, not as secrets to be uncovered, but as truths that simply are.
Time moves quietly here. It does not announce itself. It does not press forward. It simply passes, gently, like the wind across the sand. Inside the chamber, nothing marks its passing. There are no shadows shifting with the sun, no changes in light from morning to evening, no sound of footsteps, no echo of voices, only stillness. A stillness so complete that time feels as though it has softened, slowed, almost paused. And yet, beyond the stone, beyond the layers of sand, the world continues its steady rhythm. Days come and go, the sun rises and sets, the sky changes its color from pale morning to deep evening, again and again. Seasons pass, though gently in this land. The heat grows stronger, then softer. The river rises, then returns to its banks. Each cycle repeating, never exactly the same, but always familiar. Years turn into generations, generations into centuries, and still the desert remains. It changes slowly, almost invisibly. The dunes shift inch by inch. A line of sand becomes a curve. A small rise becomes a hollow. The surface of the land reshapes itself, not with force, but with patience. Wind moves across it, day after day, night after night, carrying grains of sand, placing them somewhere new, then moving them again. Nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent on the surface. And yet, beneath it all, some things remain unchanged. The chamber is one of those things, sealed away from the movement above, protected from the shifting sands, held in a quiet space where time does not reach in the same way. The objects inside do not age as they would in the open air. They do not feel the wind. They do not feel the heat of the sun. They exist in a steady state, untouched by the slow changes of the outside world. It is a different kind of time, not measured by days or seasons, but by stillness, by the simple fact that nothing moves, nothing shifts, nothing fades. Above, the memory of the chamber becomes softer, not all at once, but gradually. Those who once knew its exact location pass on, their knowledge carried quietly with them, then slowly dissolving into the wider flow of time. New generations walk the land. They see the pyramids. They feel their presence. But the hidden spaces beneath are no longer part of their daily awareness. They become something distant, something imagined, something that belongs to a time that feels far away. And still, the desert continues its gentle covering. More sand gathers, more layers settle. The surface smooths until the signs that once hinted at what lay below become almost impossible to notice. But not entirely gone. Never entirely gone. Because time in this place does not erase completely. It leaves traces, soft ones, subtle ones, a slight firmness beneath the sand, a shape that does not quite follow the natural curves of the dunes, a feeling rather than a clear sign. These traces remain, waiting, without urgency. And far above, the stars continue their quiet movement across the sky, night after night, year after year. Their patterns shift slowly, almost imperceptibly, but always with a steady rhythm. The same stars that were seen by those who built the chamber,
the same stars that watched as it was sealed, as the sand began to cover it, as the memory of it faded from the surface world. There is a continuity here, a quiet thread that runs through everything, from the smallest grain of sand to the vast stretch of the sky, from the moment the chamber was created to the long years of its rest beneath the desert. Nothing is truly separate. Everything exists within the same slow passage of time. And yet, the experience of time is different in each place. Above ground, it moves with rhythm, with cycles, with change. Below ground, it settles into stillness, into quiet preservation, into a calm, unbroken presence. Inside the chamber, the objects remain exactly as they were. A jar stands where it was placed. A piece of cloth rests in its folded form. The markings on the walls hold their shapes, unchanged, unmoving. There is no sense of waiting, no sense of anticipation, only existence, complete as it is. This kind of stillness is not empty, it is full, full of the moment in which everything was left, a moment that has been gently held, without interruption, across the passing of centuries. And when that moment is touched again, when light returns, when footsteps enter once more, it does not feel broken. It feels continuous, as though no time has passed at all. This is the quiet nature of what lies beneath the sand, not lost, not forgotten, but resting in a different way, a way that does not depend on memory or awareness or even time itself. The desert above continues its slow breathing. The wind moves, the sand shifts, the surface changes again and again, but always gently, always without hurry. And under it, the chamber remains, a quiet center of stillness, a place where time has softened into something almost invisible. The night deepens once more. The stars shine with steady light. The land cools, and everything settles into silence again, just as it has for so very long.
The silence continues, unbroken, gentle, complete. For a long time, nothing changes. The chamber rests beneath the weight of the sand, held in quiet stillness. The objects remain where they were placed. The air stays calm and unmoving. The markings on the walls hold their shapes without fading. Above, the desert continues its slow rhythm. Wind moves, sand shifts, light comes and goes. And over many years, very slowly, something begins to return. Not suddenly, not with force, but in the same quiet way that everything happens here. Attention. At first, it is only a feeling, a sense that certain places hold more than what can be seen. Those who walk the desert begin to notice small things again. The way the sand settles differently in one place. The way a surface beneath feels firmer, less like a shifting dune, and more like something steady. A line, faint, almost invisible, but too straight to be shaped by wind alone. These are not clear signs. They do not stand out. They require patience. They require stillness. And those who notice them do not rush to act. They return again and again, allowing their understanding to grow slowly. Time passes. Days blend into one another. The sun rises and sets. The wind continues its quiet work. And then, gently, the process begins. The sand is brushed aside, not all at once, not with sudden movement, but carefully, by hand, by small, steady effort, grain by grain,
layer by layer. Each movement reveals just a little more. At first, only a change in texture, then a hint of shape. Stone begins to appear, faintly beneath the surface. It does not shine, it does not call attention to itself. It simply rests there, as it always has. The clearing continues, slowly, patiently, until the outline becomes clearer. A flat surface, an edge, a corner that meets another with quiet precision, and then the suggestion of an entrance. It is not dramatic, it is not large, but it is certain. A place that was once known, now returning to view. Those who uncover it pause, not out of hesitation, but out of understanding. They know that what lies beyond has been undisturbed for a very long time, that the space inside holds a stillness that should not be broken carelessly. So they wait. They allow the moment to settle. The air remains calm, the desert quiet. Even the wind seems softer here, as if it too recognizes the stillness of the place. Then, slowly, the process begins again. The sand is moved aside, stone is uncovered, and the entrance begins to take form once more. The darkness beyond it feels deep, not empty, but full of quiet, full of time. Light is brought forward gently. A soft glow reaches into the opening. It does not rush inside. It touches the edges first, the stone, the surface, revealing what has long been hidden. The first step inside is careful, measured. The air feels different, still and settled, as it has been for centuries. The walls appear slowly in the dim light. The markings begin to show themselves again. Simple forms, calm shapes. Nothing has changed. Nothing has moved. The objects remain. Jars stand where they were placed. Cloth rests in its folded form. Tools lie undisturbed. Everything is exactly as it was. Time has not altered this space. It has only passed around it. Those who enter do not speak. There is no need. The silence holds everything. Every sound would feel too strong, too sudden. So they move quietly, observing, allowing their eyes to adjust, their thoughts to slow. Because this is not a place to be understood quickly. It reveals itself slowly, gently, only as much as is needed in each moment. As they move deeper, the chamber opens once more. The central space appears again, calm and balanced. The same presence remains, unchanged, undisturbed. There is a feeling here, not of discovery, but of return, as though the space has always been present, simply waiting for attention to find it again. The connection between past and present becomes clearer, not through words, not through explanation, but through presence, through stillness, through the simple act of standing in a place where time has rested. Outside, the desert continues its quiet movement. The wind shifts the sand. The stars move slowly across the sky. Nothing stops, nothing pauses. And yet, within the chamber, there is a different kind of experience. One where time feels distant, where moments do not pass in the same way, where everything remains just as it was. The people who stand here begin to understand, slowly, gently, that this place is not meant to be changed. It is not meant to be taken apart. It is not meant to be rushed. It is meant to be approached with care, to be seen, to be felt, and then to be left in its quiet state. Because the value of this place is not in what it can be taken from it, but in what it holds exactly as it is. The light flickers softly, shadows move across the walls, the markings shift in the glow, then return to stillness. Everything breathes in its own quiet way, not with motion, but with presence. And as the moment settles, the chamber feels whole again, not newly discovered, not changed, but simply reconnected to the surface world for a brief time. Outside, the night deepens, the stars shine steadily, the desert cools, and the sand continues its slow, endless drift, covering, uncovering, shaping, reshaping, always moving, always gentle. And under it all, the chamber remains, calm, patient, unchanged, holding its quiet story just as it always has.
The chamber rests in a quiet balance. The soft light lingers just enough to reveal what is present, but not enough to disturb the calm. Shadows remain gentle, stretching along the stone as though they belong there, as though they have always been part of the space. Nothing inside asks to be understood quickly. Nothing asks to be taken or moved. Everything simply exists, steady, patient, complete. Those who stand within the chamber begin to feel a quiet connection, not something sudden, not something that can be explained in clear words, but a slow awareness, a gentle sense that the distance between past and present is not as wide as it once seemed. The air carries that feeling, still and undisturbed, yet full of presence, a presence left behind by those who once walked here, who once placed each object, who once stood in this same quiet space. It is not a memory in the usual sense. There are no voices, no echoes of sound, only the feeling of continuity, of something that has remained unbroken. A hand moves slowly over the surface of the stone wall, not pressing, not tracing every line, just resting there, lightly. The stone is cool, firm, unchanged. The markings beneath the hand feel shallow, but deliberate, each line shaped with intention, not hurried, not careless. The person standing there does not try to interpret them all at once. There is no need. Understanding here comes slowly, piece by piece, moment by moment. Nearby, a jar sits quietly. Its surface is smooth, though time has softened its edges slightly. It has not been opened, it has not been disturbed, and yet it feels complete, as though its purpose remains intact even after all this time. The same is true for everything in the chamber. Nothing feels abandoned, nothing feels forgotten. Each object carries its place, its meaning, in a way that has not faded. Outside, far above the stone and sand, the desert continues its endless rhythm. The wind moves gently across the dunes. Grains of sand shift, settling into new patterns. The surface changes, though so slowly it is almost impossible to notice in a single moment. The stars move across the sky in their steady paths, the same stars that once watched over those who built this place, the same quiet lights that marked the passing of nights, one after another, without urgency. Back inside, the chamber holds its stillness, but now there is something more. Not a change in the space itself, but a change in the awareness of those who have entered it, a deeper sense of connection, a quiet understanding that what they are seeing is not separate from them, not distant, but part of a continuous human experience. The people who once lived here woke to the same light, walked on the same earth, felt the same warmth of the sun, the same coolness of the night air. Their lives were simple, steady, connected to the rhythms of the land, and the objects within this chamber are small reflections of those lives,
a jar that once held water or grain, a piece of cloth that was shaped by careful hands, a tool that served a quiet purpose again and again. These are not grand things. They are not distant or unreachable. They are familiar in a quiet human way. And in that familiarity, the distance between past and present begins to soften. Time no longer feels like a long, unbroken line. It feels more like a gentle circle where moments can meet, where the past can rest beside the present without conflict. The chamber becomes more than a hidden space. It becomes a place of quiet meeting, not between people, but between moments, between ways of living, between understandings that exist beyond words. The people who stand here begin to move even more slowly, not because they are uncertain, but because they understand that this place does not respond to speed. It responds to stillness, to patience, to quiet attention. They do not take anything. They do not disturb the arrangement. They allow everything to remain exactly as it is, because to change it would be to break the quiet balance that has been held for so long. The light flickers once more, soft, steady. Shadows shift gently along the walls. The markings seem to move for a brief moment, then return to stillness. Everything settles again. The air remains calm. The silence deepens. And in that silence, there is a sense of completion, not an ending, but a fullness, a quiet understanding that this place is whole, exactly as it is. Outside, the night continues. The desert breathes slowly. The sand drifts. The stars remain steady above. And beneath it all, the chamber holds its place, unchanged, unhurried, a quiet center in the middle of time's slow movement. The people who have entered begin to step back, not quickly, not suddenly, but with the same care they used to come in, each step measured, each movement gentle. The light moves with them, slowly retreating from the deeper parts of the chamber. The shadows return. The darkness settles once more, not as something empty, but as something complete. As the entrance is reached again, there is a pause, a final moment of stillness, a quiet acknowledgement of what has been seen and what remains. Then, slowly, they step out, back into the open air, back into the wide, quiet desert. The night sky stretches above them. The stars glow softly. The wind moves gently across the land. Behind them, the chamber remains, unchanged, untouched, holding its quiet presence beneath the sand. The opening may be covered again gently, carefully, allowing the desert to continue its slow work. Because some things are not meant to remain exposed. Some things are meant to rest, just as they have for so long. And so the connection remains, even as the surface returns to stillness. The past does not disappear. It settles back into its quiet place, waiting, as it always has.
The desert stretches far beyond what the eye can hold. Even in the quiet of night, when the light is soft and the edges of the land fade into shadow, there is a sense of endless distance. The sand rolls gently outward, forming dunes that rise and fall like a slow, steady breath. Nothing feels crowded here. Nothing feels close. There is space, wide and open, where time seems to move differently. The chamber that was uncovered rests once more beneath the surface. Its presence remains, though unseen, calm, complete. But it is not alone. Across the desert, far beyond the reach of a single step or even many days of walking, there are other places, similar in their stillness, similar in their quiet purpose, hidden beneath the sand, waiting without waiting, each one shaped by careful hands long ago,
each one holding its own arrangement, its own balance, its own quiet story. They are not connected by visible paths. There are no clear lines drawn between them, and yet they share something, a sense of intention, a sense of calm creation followed by long, undisturbed rest. In the distant past, the people who lived along the river did not see the desert as empty. They understood it as a place of quiet, a place where the world softened, where sound faded, where the surface of life gave way to something deeper. It was not a place for hurried movement. It was a place for stillness. And so, when they chose where to build these hidden spaces, they did so with care. They moved away from the daily rhythm of the river, away from the fields and homes, into the open land where the sand stretched wide and silent. There they shaped the earth, not in large, sudden ways, but slowly, steadily, with patience. Stone was placed, passages were formed, chambers were prepared, each one unique, yet similar in its quiet purpose. Some were small, simple, holding only a few objects placed with care. Others were larger, with more space, more detail, but always the same calm balance. Nothing was excessive, nothing was done for display. Everything had meaning, even if that meaning was not always clear to those who came much later. Over time, these places were sealed, just as the first chamber had been, stone closing the entrances, sand beginning its slow covering, and one by one they became part of the desert itself. Hidden, softened by time, held in quiet stillness. Generations passed, the knowledge of these places faded, not suddenly, not completely, but gradually, like the fading of footprints in the sand. And yet the land remembered, not in words, not in stories, but in form, in subtle shapes beneath the surface, in the quiet firmness of stone hidden below shifting dunes, in the way the wind moved slightly differently over certain areas. These were not clear signs. They were gentle, almost invisible, but they were there, waiting. And just as one chamber was found, others would be found too. Not all at once, not with urgency, but slowly, over time, as attention returned to the land. A person walking across the desert might pause, feeling something beneath their feet. Another might notice a slight rise, a shape that does not quite match the natural curves around it. These moments of noticing are quiet. They do not demand action. They simply exist, like the chambers themselves. And when the time feels right, when patience has been given, the process begins again. Sand is brushed aside, carefully, slowly. Stone appears, an edge, a surface, the suggestion of something hidden. Each discovery is not loud, it is not sudden, it is a gentle unfolding, a quiet return. Inside each chamber, the same stillness waits, the same calm presence, objects resting where they were placed, air unmoving, silence complete. And yet each space feels slightly different, not in a dramatic way, but in small, subtle details. The arrangement of objects, the markings on the walls, the size and shape of the chamber itself. These differences do not stand out immediately. They reveal themselves slowly, with time, with careful observation. And each one adds to the quiet understanding of the people who once lived here. Not as a collection of facts, not as a clear, ordered story, but as a feeling, a sense of how life moved, how it was shaped, how it continued beyond what could be seen.
the desert becomes a place of quiet discovery, not busy, not crowded, but patient, allowing each hidden space to be found in its own time. There is no need to uncover everything at once, no need to rush from one place to another, because each chamber holds its own stillness, its own complete moment, and to move too quickly would be to miss that. The wind continues to pass over the land. The sand continues to shift. Some places are revealed, others are covered again. The surface is always changing, always moving, but beneath it, the deeper layers remain, holding what has been placed there, holding it gently, without change. At night, the stars look down over all of it, the same steady lights, unchanged in their quiet patterns. They do not focus on one place over another. They shine evenly across the entire desert. And beneath their light, the hidden chambers rest, spread across the land, each one part of a larger whole, a quiet network of stillness, connected not by paths, but by purpose. The people who come to understand this do so slowly. They begin to see the desert differently, not as empty space, but as a place filled with presence, with layers of time resting one upon another, with quiet stories held beneath the surface. And as they move across the land, they do so with more care, more patience, more stillness, because they understand that beneath almost every step there may be something waiting, not to be uncovered quickly, but to be approached gently when the time feels right. The night deepens once more, the air cools, the wind softens, and the desert returns to its steady, quiet state, endless, calm, holding its secrets, not tightly, but peacefully, as it always has.
The desert and the river exist side by side, yet they feel like different worlds. One is wide and dry, open and silent. The other moves gently, carrying water, life, and quiet motion through the land. Between them, there is a soft connection, not a sharp boundary, not a sudden change, but a gradual shift, where sand gives way to soil, where stillness meets slow movement. In the early morning, when the light is just beginning to return, this connection feels most clear. The desert remains cool, its surface untouched except for the faint patterns left by the night wind. The river, not far away, flows quietly, its surface smooth, reflecting the pale colors of the sky. Mist sometimes rises from the water, thin and soft, drifting slowly before fading into the air. The people who once lived here moved between these two worlds with ease. They understood both. They did not see them as separate. The river was where life gathered, where water was drawn, where fields were planted and tended. The desert was where stillness lived, where the world slowed, where deeper meanings were held, quietly, beneath the surface. Each day began near the river. The sound of water, soft and steady, would greet the morning. Hands would dip into it, lifting it into clay jars. The surface would ripple, then return to calm. Nearby, the soil would be dark and rich, fields stretching out in gentle rows, plants growing slowly, steadily under the warmth of the sun. There was a rhythm here, one that repeated with quiet certainty, watering, planting, waiting, harvesting, each step following the next without hurry, without force. The people worked with the land, not against it. They watched the changes. They felt the timing. They understood when to act and when to rest.
This understanding came not from instruction, but from presence, from living within the rhythm, day after day, year after year. And when their work was done, when the sun grew higher and the heat settled across the fields, they would return to stillness, sometimes in the shade of their homes, sometimes in quiet places where the air moved gently, and sometimes they would walk toward the desert, not for work, not for gathering, but for something quieter, something less defined. The desert did not offer what the river did. It did not provide water or crops. It did not support daily life in the same visible way. But it offered something else: space, silence, a sense of calm that could not be found in the movement of the river. Walking into the desert was not a journey of distance. It was a shift in feeling. Each step carried them further from the sounds of the village, further from the rhythm of daily tasks, and deeper into a quiet that allowed thought to slow, to settle, to become still. It was in this stillness that many of their deeper understandings took shape, not through long explanations, not through complex ideas, but through quiet observation, through feeling the land, the air, the space around them. The hidden chambers were placed within this world, not near the noise of life, but within the calm of the desert, a space where stillness already existed, a place where time felt slower, softer, less defined. The connection between the river and the desert shaped everything: life and stillness, movement and rest, beginning and continuation. These were not seen as opposites. They were part of the same cycle. The river brought life forward. The desert held it gently beyond what could be seen. Inside the chambers, this connection is present, even in silence. The objects reflect daily life near the river: jars that once held water, tools that shaped the soil, cloth that was woven and worn, and yet they rest now in the stillness of the desert, placed carefully away from the movement of everyday life, as if bridging the two worlds, holding them together in one quiet space. Those who now uncover these chambers begin to sense this connection, not through direct knowledge, not through clear explanation, but through feeling, through the way the space holds both presence and stillness at once, through the way objects from daily life rest in a place that feels beyond daily time. The desert outside continues its slow rhythm. The wind moves, the sand shifts, the surface changes, gently, endlessly. And not far away, the river continues to flow, always moving, always returning, always part of the cycle. These two worlds exist together, just as they always have, neither one complete without the other, neither one separate. And the hidden chambers remain between them, quietly, patiently, holding their place. As the day moves forward, the light grows stronger, the desert warms, the river reflects the brightness of the sky. Life continues, just as it always has. But beneath it all, the quiet spaces remain, unchanged, holding the connection between movement and stillness, between what is seen and what is not. The people who walk this land begin to move with greater awareness. They feel the difference between the river and the desert. They understand that each holds its own kind of presence, and they learn to approach both with care, with patience, with quiet attention, because in both places there is something to be understood, not quickly, not completely, but slowly, gently, over time. The sun begins to lower once more. The light softens, the heat eases, and the land prepares to return to evening. The same cycle continues, always steady, always calm, and beneath the surface the secrets remain, not hidden away, but resting quietly in the space between worlds.
The day begins to soften. The brightness of the sun slowly fades into a warmer, gentler light. The heat that once settled across the land starts to lift, little by little, as if the air itself is exhaling after a long, quiet effort. Shadows stretch across the ground. They grow longer, thinner, reaching slowly across the sand and soil, touching places that had been hidden in the brightness of the day. Near the river, the rhythm of work comes to a calm close. Hands move more slowly now. Tools are set aside. The steady motion of the day gives way to stillness. Water is gathered once more, not in haste, but with familiarity. Clay jars are filled, lifted, carried with care. The surface of the river reflects the changing sky, soft gold, fading into pale shades of blue and gray. There's no rush to leave, no sudden end to the day. It simply quiets, gradually, like a sound fading into silence. People begin to return to their homes. Footsteps follow the same paths, worn smooth by many days before. Children walk beside them, calm, observing, carrying the quiet understanding that the day has reached its natural end. Inside the homes, the air holds the warmth of the sun, but it begins to cool. The walls release the heat slowly, allowing the space to become comfortable again. Small preparations are made for the evening, simple meals, nothing elaborate, nothing rushed. Grain, ground earlier in the day, is used again. Bread is warmed, water is poured. There is a softness to these moments, a quiet continuation of the same steady rhythm that has carried through the day. Voices are low, gentle, not filling the space, but resting within it. There is no need for many words. The presence of others is enough. Outside, the sky deepens. The sun lowers further, nearing the horizon. Its light becomes softer still, spreading across the land in a warm, golden glow. The desert not far away begins to cool. The sand releases the heat it has held all day. The air shifts, becoming lighter, calmer. This is the time when the boundary between the known and the unseen feels closest, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that demands attention, but in a quiet, subtle sense, as though the world is gently opening, allowing space for deeper stillness. The people feel this, even if they do not speak of it. It is part of their rhythm, part of their understanding. As the light fades, the first stars begin to appear, small points of steady brightness scattered across the darkening sky. They do not arrive all at once. They emerge slowly, one by one, until the sky is filled with them. The same stars that have always been there, the same quiet lights that watched over the land long before and continue to do so now. Evening deepens into night. The village grows quiet. Sounds fade, movements slow. And in this calm, some people remain awake, not in activity, but in stillness. They sit quietly. They look upward. They allow their thoughts to move slowly or to settle completely. There is no need to seek answers, no need to understand everything. There is only the quiet presence of the moment. The desert under the night sky feels vast and endless. The
The sand reflects the faint light of the stars, creating a soft, dim glow that stretches far into the distance. The pyramids stand as they always have, still, silent, unchanged. Their shapes now darker against the sky, but no less present. Beneath them, beneath the wide, quiet land, the hidden spaces remain. They do not notice the passing of evening. They do not feel the coolness of the night. They remain in their constant stillness, separate from the cycles above. And yet they are connected in a quiet way. The people who once lived here carried an understanding that extended beyond what could be seen. They did not separate the visible world from the unseen. They felt them as part of the same whole. The movements of the day, the stillness of the night, the life near the river, the quiet of the desert, all of it belonged together. And within that understanding, the hidden spaces held their place, not as something distant, not as something feared, but as a natural part of the cycle. As evening deepens, the air grows cooler still. A soft breeze moves across the land, brushing gently against the surface of the sand, carrying with it a sense of calm. The stars continue their slow movement across the sky, their paths steady, unchanging. Time passes, but not in a way that feels urgent, not in a way that presses forward. It simply flows, quietly, like the river, like the wind. In the stillness of the night, the connection between all things feels clearer. The land, the sky, the unseen spaces beneath the surface, the people who once lived here and those who walk the land now, all part of the same quiet passage, all moving within the same gentle rhythm. And as the night continues, everything settles further. The village rests, the desert remains calm, the stars shine softly above, and beneath it all, the secrets remain, not hidden away, not waiting to be found, but resting quietly, exactly where they belong.
Time continues to move, quietly, without drawing attention to itself. Days pass into nights, nights return to mornings. The same soft cycles repeat, again and again, without interruption. At first, nothing feels different. The river continues to flow, the fields continue to grow. The desert continues to stretch outward in its calm, endless way. People wake, work, rest, and sleep just as they always have. Their footsteps follow familiar paths. Their hands repeat familiar tasks. Their lives unfold in the same gentle rhythm, steady and unhurried. But over many years, something begins to shift. Not in a way that can be seen clearly, not in a single moment, but slowly, almost imperceptibly. The people who once knew every detail of the land begin to pass on. Their knowledge, once clear and present, becomes softer as it is carried forward. Not lost all at once, but changed, reshaped, like sand moved gently by the wind. Stories are shared, but fewer details remain. Names fade, exact places become less certain. What was once known through direct experience becomes something remembered, then something imagined. And still life continues. New generations rise with the morning light. They walk the same land. They feel the same warmth of the sun. They drink from the same river. But their understanding is slightly different. Not less, just changed. They know the pyramids. They see them on the horizon. They feel their quiet presence. But the deeper spaces beneath, the hidden chambers, are no longer part of everyday awareness.
They become something distant, something that belongs to a time before memory. And so the connection softens, not broken, just quieter. The desert continues its slow work. The wind moves, the sand shifts, layer upon layer settles across the surface. Small rises become larger dunes, edges disappear, lines soften. Places that were once clear become part of the open land. The entrances to the hidden chambers, once known, once walked through, become covered. Not buried suddenly, but gently, a little at a time, until they are no longer visible, until they are part of the desert itself. But even as the surface changes, the deeper layers remain. The chambers hold their stillness, the objects remain in place, the air stays calm, nothing within them shifts or fades. They continue to exist just as they were left, a quiet presence beneath the changing world above. Above, memory continues to move like the sand. Sometimes it gathers, sometimes it drifts. There are moments when something is remembered more clearly, a story told again, a place spoken of with quiet curiosity, a feeling that something lies beneath the surface. But these moments are brief. They do not last. They fade again, returning to the gentle flow of time. The desert does not rush to reveal what it holds. It does not push forward. It simply continues, steady and calm, allowing everything to unfold in its own time. Generations come and go. The land remains. The river flows. The sky stretches wide above. And beneath it all, the hidden spaces remain unchanged. There is something peaceful in this kind of passage. Nothing is forced. Nothing is lost completely. Everything is carried, in some form, within the slow movement of time. Even when details fade, the essence remains, a quiet sense that something is there, something beneath the surface, something waiting, not to be found quickly, but to be noticed gently. As the years continue to pass, the surface of the land becomes smoother, more uniform. The small traces that once hinted at what lay below become harder to see, but not impossible, never impossible, because the desert does not erase, it softens, it holds, it preserves in its own quiet way. And so, even as memory fades, the possibility of rediscovery remains, always present, always calm, waiting without urgency, waiting without expectation. The stars continue their slow movement across the sky, the same patterns repeating, the same quiet light touching the land each night. They witness everything, without change, without interruption. And beneath their steady glow, the desert rests. The sand shifts just a little. The air cools. The silence deepens. And the hidden chambers remain, unseen, untouched, holding their quiet stillness beneath the surface. Time moves forward, but it also circles back, and in that gentle return, what has been softened may one day be seen again. Not all at once, not with sudden clarity, but slowly, patiently, as it always has.
Time continues its slow and gentle passage. Nothing in the desert ever feels rushed. Even change, when it comes, arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, like a shadow lengthening at the end of the day. For many years, the land remains as it is, smooth, endless. The dunes rise and fall in soft curves, shaped by the patient movement of the wind. The pyramids stand in the distance, steady and unchanged, their presence a quiet reminder of something older than memory. The hidden chambers remain beneath it all,
unseen, undisturbed, complete in their stillness. But just as memory once faded slowly, it begins, in its own quiet way, to return. Not suddenly, not clearly, but gently, like the first faint light before sunrise. It begins with small moments. A person walking across the desert pauses without knowing exactly why. The sand beneath their feet feels slightly different, firmer, more settled. It is not something that draws immediate attention, just a feeling, subtle, easy to overlook. But it lingers, and so they pause a little longer. They look around. The land appears the same as it always has, wide, open, calm. But something beneath that calm feels slightly altered, as though the surface is holding something just below. Days pass, the moment might be forgotten, or it might return, quietly, in thought, without urgency. Another person, at another time, notices something similar, a slight rise in the sand, not large enough to stand out, but different from the surrounding curves, a shape that feels almost deliberate. Again, it is not obvious, it does not demand attention, but it stays in the mind, gently, like a quiet echo. These small moments begin to gather, not forming a clear picture, not yet, but creating a sense, a feeling that there is more beneath the surface than what can be seen. Those who notice do not rush, they do not act immediately. They allow the feeling to settle. They return, sometimes days later, sometimes much longer, standing in the same place, looking again, feeling the ground beneath their feet. Over time, curiosity begins to take shape, not restless, not urgent, but calm, measured, a quiet desire to understand, to see what lies beneath, without disturbing the stillness of the land. And so the first movements begin, gentle, careful. Hands reach down to the surface of the sand, not digging deeply, not forcing the earth open, but brushing lightly, moving small amounts aside, grain by grain. The sand shifts easily. It has always been moving, always ready to settle again. At first, nothing appears, only more sand, the same soft, endless surface. But patience remains. The movement continues, slowly, steadily, until something changes, a different texture beneath the fingertips, not loose, not shifting, but firm, still. The sand is brushed away a little more, and there, just beneath the surface, stone begins to appear. It does not shine, it does not stand out, it simply rests there, quiet, as it has always been. The discovery is not sudden, it is not dramatic, it is a gentle realization, a moment of stillness, as though something long at rest has been touched again, lightly, respectfully. The clearing continues, not faster, not with excitement, but with the same calm care. More sand is moved aside, more of the stone is revealed, a flat surface, an edge, a line that meets another at a precise angle, the suggestion of something shaped, something placed there with intention. The people pause. They do not rush forward. They allow the moment to settle, to become part of the quiet rhythm of the land. Because what is being uncovered is not new. It is not something created in this moment. It is something returning, gently, from a long rest. As the work continues, the shape becomes clearer, the outline of an entrance, faint but certain, a place that once led below into stillness, into quiet space. The sand has covered it for many years, layer by layer, softly, patiently, and now that covering begins to lift, not all at once, not completely, but just enough to reveal what has always been there. The air around the place feels calm, unchanged, as though it recognizes the moment and accepts it without resistance. There is no sense of intrusion, no feeling of disruption, only a quiet continuation, as if the land itself understands that this moment was always part of the cycle. Light begins to reach the surface of the stone, soft, natural, steady. It reveals the texture, the subtle marks left by hands long ago, each line, each surface holding the memory of its creation. The people who stand there feel the stillness deepen, not in the ground, not in the air, but within themselves. Their movements slow, their breathing softens, they become part of the quiet. And in that quiet, the connection between past and present begins to form again. Not fully, not clearly, but gently, like a memory returning, piece by piece, without force. The entrance remains only partially revealed. The chamber below is still hidden, still resting, still untouched. But the path towards it has begun to open, and that is enough for now. There is no need to go further, not yet, because in this place everything unfolds slowly, everything is given time. The desert does not hurry, the past does not hurry to be seen, and those who listen to the quiet understand this. They step back, not out of hesitation, but out of respect, allowing the moment to settle, to become still once more. The sand remains partially moved. The stone rests beneath the open air again for the first time in many years. But the deeper space below continues to wait, calm, patient, unchanged. The sun begins to lower in the sky, the light softens, the shadows grow longer, and the land prepares once more for evening. The cycle continues, always steady, always gentle, and beneath it all, the quiet story moves forward, slowly, just as it always has.
The light of the day begins to soften again. The sun lowers slowly, casting long, quiet shadows across the desert. The warmth that filled the air begins to ease, and the wind returns in a gentle, steady flow. The place where the sand was brushed aside remains still. The stone that was revealed rests quietly beneath the open sky, its surface unchanged despite the passing of so many years. It does not react to the light or the air. It simply exists, as it always has. For a time, nothing more is done. The people who uncovered it step away, allowing the moment to settle. The land returns to its calm rhythm. The wind moves lightly across the surface, shifting a few grains of sand, but not enough to cover what has been revealed. Night comes again. The stars return, steady and quiet. The desert cools, and beneath the surface, the chamber remains just as it has always been, undisturbed, patient, complete. When morning returns, it does so gently. A pale light spreads across the horizon, slowly bringing the land back into view. The sky grows brighter, but never suddenly. It unfolds, just as everything does here. The people return, not quickly, not all at once, but gradually, as though drawn back by something calm and steady. They stand near the place where the stone was revealed. They do not rush to begin. They observe. They feel the stillness of the land, the quiet presence beneath their feet. And then, slowly, they begin again. The sand is moved aside with care, hands brushing lightly, tools used gently, never forcing, never disturbing more than necessary. Each movement is small, measured, intentional. The stone's surface becomes clearer. More of its shape is revealed. The edges that were once faint begin to take form. Lines appear, straight, deliberate, unmistakably shaped by human hands. The outline of the entrance grows more certain. It is not large. It does not stand out in a dramatic way, but it holds a quiet precision, a sense that it was made with purpose, with care, with understanding. The sand that once covered it is set aside, not thrown away, not scattered, but placed gently, as though even the sand is part of the story. Time passes as the work continues. The sun rises higher, the light becomes stronger, but the pace does not change. There is no urgency, no need to finish quickly, because what lies beneath has waited for so long. It does not require haste. As more sand is cleared, the entrance becomes visible, a narrow opening, still partially sealed, still holding the quiet darkness within. The stone that covers it is firm, unmoved by time, but with patience, with steady effort, it begins to give, not suddenly, not easily, but slowly, responding to careful hands. The covering is loosened, shifted, moved just enough to allow a small opening to form. The darkness inside feels deep, still, complete. It does not push outward, it does not change, it simply remains, as it always has. There is a pause, a quiet moment before anything more is done. The people stand still. They do not speak. They allow the air to settle. They allow themselves to adjust to the presence of the space before them. Because this is not just an opening in the ground, it is a return, a gentle reconnection to something that has remained untouched for generations. Light is brought forward, soft and steady. It does not rush into the opening. It rests at the edge, touching the stone, revealing its surface, before slowly moving inward. The first step is taken, careful, measured. The ground inside is firm, unchanged. The air is different, still, quiet, holding a calm that has not been disturbed. The passage reveals itself slowly. The walls appear in the soft light, smooth in some places, marked in others. The same careful shaping, the same quiet intention, visible in every surface. Nothing has shifted, nothing has fallen. Everything remains exactly as it was. The deeper they move, the more the stillness grows. It is not heavy, it is not overwhelming, it is calm, complete, a kind of silence that feels full rather than empty. The chamber beyond begins to open, familiar in its quiet balance, even if it has never been seen before by those who now enter. Objects rest where they were placed, jars, cloth, tools, each one holding its position, unchanged, untouched. Time has not altered them, it has only passed around them. The people move slowly. They do not reach out immediately. They observe. They allow the space to be what it is, because they understand now, more clearly than before, that this place is not meant to be disturbed. It is meant to be approached with care, with patience, with stillness.
The light flickers softly. Shadows move along the walls. The markings appear once more, calm, balanced, unchanged. Everything holds its place. Everything remains whole. Outside, the day continues. The sun moves across the sky. The desert warms. The wind shifts the sand. The sky stretches wide. And beneath it all, the chamber rests, calm, patient, holding its quiet story, just as it always has.
The chamber returns to its quiet rhythm, even with the entrance slightly open, even with light having touched its walls once more. Nothing within has changed. The stillness remains complete, as if it has simply accepted the brief presence of the outside world and allowed it to pass through without disturbance. Outside, the desert continues its slow, endless motion. The wind moves gently across the sand. The surface shifts in small, patient ways. The sky above stretches wide and calm, carrying the soft movement of light from morning into day. Those who have entered the chamber carry something with them now. Not an object, not a clear answer, but a quiet understanding. It does not come all at once. It does not form into words easily. It rests within them, slowly, like a thought that has no need to be spoken. They move differently now. Their steps across the sand are softer, their movements more measured, as though they have learned something about stillness simply by being in its presence. When they return to the open land, they do not rush to speak of what they have seen. There is no urgency to explain, because what they experienced does not feel like something that can be fully shared. It is something felt, something carried quietly, something that unfolds slowly over time. They walk along the edge where desert meets the rest of the land, where the sand begins to soften into soil, where the air holds a slight difference, a hint of life carried from the river not far away. The connection between these places becomes clearer now. The stillness of the chamber, the movement of the desert, the steady flow of the river, all part of the same quiet whole. Nothing feels separate, nothing feels distant. Even the passing of time feels less like a straight path and more like a gentle circle, always returning, always continuing. As the day unfolds, the world resumes its familiar rhythm. The sun rises higher, the warmth settles across the land. Life continues near the river, calm and steady. And yet, something subtle has shifted. Not in the land, not in the objects, but in awareness. Those who have touched the quiet of the chamber begin to see the world with a softer attention. They notice the way the wind moves across the sand, the way light rests on the surface of stone, the way sound fades into silence at the edge of the desert. Small details, always present, but now more clearly felt. This understanding does not lead to action. It does not push them to change anything. Instead, it encourages stillness, patience, a deeper respect for what already exists. They return to the chamber again, but not often, and never with urgency. Each visit is spaced by time, days, sometimes longer, because they understand that the space does not require constant attention. It remains complete whether they are there or not. When they do return, their movements are even slower, even quieter. They enter with care. They observe without touching. They allow the space to remain undisturbed, and in that stillness, their understanding deepens, gently, without force. They begin to notice patterns, not obvious ones, not something that can be easily described, but a sense of balance, a quiet order in the way everything has been placed. The objects are not random, the markings are not scattered. Everything exists in relation to everything else, a quiet harmony held in place across time. This harmony begins to shape their thoughts, not in a structured way,
not in a way that leads to conclusions, but in a softer way, influencing how they see the world around them. They begin to move with more care in all things. Their actions become slower, more deliberate. They speak less, but listen more, not just to others, but to the quiet of the land itself. The desert, in its vast stillness, becomes something more than an open space. It becomes a place of quiet reflection, a place where thought can slow, where the mind can settle, where understanding can form without pressure. The river, in its steady movement, continues to offer life, but it also begins to feel like part of a larger rhythm, one that includes stillness as much as motion. Everything becomes connected, not in a way that needs to be explained, but in a way that can be felt, quietly, over time. The chamber beneath the sand remains at the center of this quiet awareness, not as something to be explored fully, not as something to be uncovered completely, but as a presence, a reminder, a place where stillness has been held, unchanged across countless years. And that stillness continues to reach outwards, touching those who come near, shaping their understanding in small, gentle ways. As the day moves toward evening once more, the light softens, the heat begins to ease, shadows stretch across the land. The same quiet transition unfolds, just as it always has. Nothing is rushed, nothing is forced, everything moves at its own pace. And beneath it all, the chamber remains, unchanged, calm, patient, holding its quiet balance, its quiet meaning, exactly as it was left. The people step away again, returning to the open land, carrying with them the same quiet awareness, the same gentle connection. And as they move across the desert, their footsteps leave soft impressions in the sand, soon to be softened away by the wind, just as all things are softened over time, just as all moments pass and return in their own quiet way. The night begins to gather again, the sky deepens, the stars prepare to return, and the desert settles into stillness once more, holding everything gently within its endless calm.
The night returns with its familiar calm. The sky darkens slowly, without sudden change, and the first stars begin to appear once more. They settle into their places above the desert, steady and quiet, just as they have always been. The air cools, the wind softens, and the land begins to rest again. The chamber beneath the sand remains unchanged. Its stillness does not fade with time. It does not weaken or shift. It continues, steady and complete, holding the quiet balance that was placed within it long ago. Even when unseen, its presence remains, not as something that calls out, not as something that demands to be known, but as something that exists, quietly, beneath the surface of everything. Those who have visited the chamber carry its stillness with them, not in a way that is heavy, not in a way that alters their lives suddenly, but in a gentle way, like a calm thought that returns again and again without effort. They begin to notice that the world around them holds similar moments of quiet, the space between sounds, the pause between movements, the stillness that exists even in places filled with activity. These moments were always there, but now they are felt more clearly, more deeply, as if the chamber has revealed something that was never hidden, only overlooked. The desert becomes a place of quiet awareness, not just a landscape of sand and wind, but a space where time feels softer, where movement slows, where presence becomes more clear. Walking across it feels different, each step more deliberate, each moment more complete. There is no need to hurry,
no need to reach a destination quickly, because the experience of moving through the land becomes enough in itself. The river, too, feels different now. Its steady flow is no longer just movement. It becomes a quiet reminder of continuity, of the way things return again and again without needing to be forced. The connection between stillness and movement becomes more apparent. The chamber holds stillness, the river holds motion, and between them life continues, balanced, calm, unbroken. Those who understand this do not speak of it often. They do not try to explain it in detail, because it is not something that fits easily into words. It is something felt, something lived, something that reveals itself slowly, over time. Days pass, then more days. The rhythm of life continues. The sun rises and sets, the desert shifts, the river flows. Nothing changes in a sudden way, and yet everything feels slightly different, more connected, more calm, more complete. The chamber beneath the sand remains as it is. Its entrance may be covered again, gently, by the drifting sand, or it may remain slightly open, just enough to allow the quiet connection to continue. Either way, its presence does not depend on being seen. It remains, steady, whether touched by light or hidden in darkness. Other hidden spaces lie across the desert, some still buried, some partially revealed, all holding their own stillness, their own quiet balance. They are not separate from one another. They share the same purpose, the same calm presence, the same connection to the rhythm of time. Together, they form something larger, not a network that can be mapped, not a pattern that can be fully understood, but a quiet presence spread across the land, a presence that exists without needing to be seen. The people who walk this land begin to sense this more clearly. They feel that the desert holds more than what appears on the surface, that beneath each step there may be something resting, something waiting, not to be uncovered quickly, but to remain in its quiet place. This awareness does not create urgency. It creates patience, a respect for what is hidden, a willingness to allow things to remain as they are, because not everything needs to be brought into the light. Some things hold their meaning more fully in stillness, more completely in quiet. As the night deepens, the stars continue their slow movement across the sky. Their light remains steady, unchanging, a constant presence above the shifting land. The desert rests, the wind moves softly, the sand settles, and beneath it all, the chambers remain, holding their quiet stories, not as secrets to be solved, but as moments preserved, moments that continue to exist even as time passes around them. The people who understand this begin to carry it forward, not through words, not through explanation, but through the way they move, the way they observe, the way they allow the world to unfold without force. This understanding spreads slowly, not widely, not quickly, but gently, from one moment to the next, from one person to another, without needing to be spoken. And so the quiet influence of the hidden spaces continues, not through discovery, not through change, but through presence, through stillness, through the simple fact that they exist. The night continues, the stars remain, the desert breathes in its slow, endless rhythm, and beneath it all, the quiet story carries on, unchanged, unhurried, complete.
The night settles more deeply now. The stars fill the sky in quiet patterns,
spreading across the darkness with a steady, unchanging light. There is no movement that can be easily seen, only the gentle sense that everything is slowly shifting, far above, in a rhythm too calm to notice in a single moment. The desert rests beneath this sky. The sand cools. The wind moves softly, brushing the surface in slow, careful motions. Small ridges form and fade again, as if the land itself is breathing, steady, unhurried, endless. Nothing asks for attention. Nothing breaks the stillness. And yet, within this quiet, there is a presence that feels full, a sense that everything, seen and unseen, exists together in one calm, continuous flow. Beneath the surface, the chambers remain, unchanged, unmoving. Their stillness does not grow or fade. It simply continues, just as it was left. The objects inside them hold their place. The air remains undisturbed. The markings on the walls rest quietly in the darkness, untouched by time. These spaces do not measure time in days or years. They do not follow the movement of the sun or the passing of seasons. They exist in a different way, a way that is not separate from time, but not shaped by it either. Above, the world continues. Morning will come. Light will return. The river will flow. People will move through their lives. But down below, nothing will change. Everything will remain exactly as it is. And in this contrast, there is a quiet harmony. Movement above, stillness below. Both part of the same whole, neither more important than the other. Those who have come to understand this no longer feel the need to separate things. They do not see the past as something distant, or the present as something separate. Instead, they begin to feel that everything exists together, layered gently, like the sand itself. One moment resting upon another, one time touching another, without conflict. This understanding is not something that grows quickly. It does not arrive fully formed. It deepens slowly over many quiet moments. In the way a person pauses before taking a step, in the way they listen to the wind without trying to follow it, in the way they sit beneath the night sky, allowing the stillness to settle around them. The desert becomes more than a place. It becomes a feeling, a quiet awareness that can be carried anywhere, even beyond the land itself. The chambers beneath the sand remain at the center of this awareness, not because they are often visited, not because they are fully understood, but because they hold the kind of stillness that does not change, a stillness that reflects something deeper, something constant within the flow of time. As the night continues, the air grows cooler, the wind slows, the surface of the sand becomes more settled. Everything moves toward a deeper calm. The stars continue their slow paths, unnoticed, unhurried, their light touching the land in the same gentle way it always has. And beneath that light, the hidden spaces remain, holding their quiet presence, holding their place within the larger rhythm of the world. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. Everything is held, in some way, within the steady passage of time, even when unseen, even when untouched. The desert does not hide things in a way that removes them. It holds them, softly, allowing them to rest until they are gently touched again, or left to remain as they are.
This understanding brings a deeper calm, a sense that nothing needs to be rushed, nothing needs to be forced into view. Everything unfolds when it is ready and remains when it is meant to stay. The people who carry this awareness begin to move through the world with greater ease. They do not seek to uncover everything. They do not try to hold on to each moment. They allow things to pass and return in their own time. Just as the sand shifts, just as the river flows, just as the stars move across the sky. Everything part of one continuous motion, one quiet rhythm. As the night deepens further, the silence becomes even more complete. There are no distant sounds, no sudden movements, only the soft presence of the land, resting as it always has. The chambers beneath remain untouched, their stillness complete, their presence quiet but certain, and above them the desert stretches on, endless, calm, unchanged in its gentle motion. Time continues, but it no longer feels like something separate. It feels like part of the stillness itself, something that moves without disturbing, something that passes without taking anything away. The night begins slowly to move toward morning, not yet visible, not yet felt, but present in the same quiet way that everything exists here. And in this moment, between what has passed and what will come, everything rests, complete, unbroken, still.
The quiet begins to soften, not in a way that breaks the stillness, but in a way that gently shifts it, as though the night itself is slowly preparing to rest. Far on the horizon, a faint light begins to form. It is not bright. It does not spread quickly. It simply appears, a soft change in the darkness, almost unnoticed at first. The stars remain. They do not disappear all at once. One by one, they begin to fade, their steady light growing softer, blending into the pale sky. The desert remains still. The sand holds its coolness from the night. The wind has slowed to almost nothing. Everything feels balanced, calm, as if the land is resting between one breath and the next. Beneath the surface, the chambers remain unchanged. Their stillness is not touched by the coming morning. They do not feel the light. They do not sense the passing of night into day. They simply continue, as they always have, holding their quiet presence without interruption. The objects within them rest in the same positions. The air remains unmoving. The markings on the walls stay calm, silent, complete. Above, the light grows a little stronger. The horizon becomes clearer. Soft shades of pale gold and gentle blue begin to spread across the sky. The transition is slow. There is no sudden brightness, only a gradual return of light, unfolding moment by moment. The desert begins to warm, not quickly, just enough to shift the air, to bring a slight change to the surface of the sand. The patterns left by the night wind remain visible, small ridges, soft curves, delicate lines that will soon be reshaped again. Everything continues its quiet cycle, the same rhythm that has moved through the land for countless years, the same gentle pattern of night and day, stillness and movement, presence and rest. Those who walk this land may rise again with the morning. They may step onto the sand, feeling its cool surface beneath their feet.
They may look out across the wide horizon, seeing the light return slowly, without hurry. Some may remember the chambers, some may not, but the presence of those hidden spaces remains, whether held in memory or not, because their meaning does not depend on being known. It does not depend on being seen. It exists quietly within the land itself, within the stillness that rests beneath everything. The river, not far away, begins its day as it always does. Its surface reflects the soft morning light, its movement steady, calm, continuous. Life will gather there again. Hands will draw water. Fields will be tended. The rhythm of daily life will continue, just as it always has. And the desert will remain nearby, open, silent, holding its quiet spaces beneath the surface. Nothing is separate. Everything flows together. The movement of the river, the stillness of the desert, the hidden chambers beneath the sand, the passing of time, all part of one continuous presence, one gentle unfolding that does not begin or end, but simply continues. The light grows a little brighter, the stars fade further, the sky opens into a soft, clear morning, the desert stretches wide, calm, unchanged, and beneath it all, the quiet remains, the chambers rest, the objects remain, the air stays still. Nothing has been disturbed, nothing has been lost, everything continues, just as it was, just as it is. The wind begins to move again, lightly, brushing across the surface of the sand. It carries small grains from one place to another. It reshapes the land, slowly, gently, without force. The traces of footsteps fade. The lines of the surface soften. Everything returns to its natural state, calm, balanced, complete. The story does not end. It does not close. It does not reach a final point. It simply continues, quietly, beyond what can be seen. The desert remains. The river flows. The sky stretches above. And beneath it all, the hidden spaces rest, holding their stillness, holding their quiet presence, just as they always have. There is no need for an ending, no need for a final word, only the gentle continuation of everything that has always been, the soft movement of time, the quiet breath of the land, the stillness that remains beneath it all. And in that stillness, everything rests, calm, unbroken, endless.
The morning settles fully into the land. The light, once soft and pale, now rests more clearly across the desert. It does not feel harsh. It spreads evenly, touching the sand, the distant stone, and the quiet horizon with the same gentle presence. The air begins to warm, slowly, without urgency. The coolness of the night fades, not all at once, but in a gradual, almost unnoticeable way. The desert remains calm. The surface of the sand shows the traces of movement from the night before, small ridges, soft patterns, faint lines that curve and shift without purpose or direction. These patterns will not last. They never do. The wind will return. The shapes will change, and the surface will become smooth again, ready to hold new patterns, new quiet moments. Beneath this ever-changing surface, the chambers remain, unchanged, still. Their presence does not rise with the sun. It does not shift with the wind. It exists in a steady state,
untouched by the movement above. Inside, the air remains calm. The objects rest exactly where they were placed. The markings on the walls continue to hold their quiet forms. Nothing asks to be seen. Nothing reaches outward. Everything simply is. Above, the world continues its gentle rhythm. Near the river, the first movements of the day begin again. Steps along familiar paths, hands reaching for water, the quiet sounds of daily life returning, soft, measured, unhurried. The river flows as it always has, its surface reflecting the morning sky, its movement steady and continuous, never stopping, never rushing. The connection between the river and the desert remains constant. Movement and stillness, sound and silence, both existing together, without conflict, without separation. Those who walk between these places carry this balance with them, even if they do not think about it, even if they do not speak of it, they feel it, in the way they move, in the way they pause, in the way they allow each moment to unfold without force. The chambers beneath the sand remain part of this balance, not visible, not active, but present, a quiet center of stillness within the broader rhythm of life. As the morning continues, the light grows a little stronger. The sand begins to reflect the brightness of the sun. The air warms further, but the calm does not fade. It remains steady, gentle, uninterrupted. A bird crosses the sky for a brief moment. Its movement is soft, almost silent, a small shift in the stillness above. Then it is gone. The sky returns to its wide, open calm. The desert holds its quiet. Nothing calls attention. Nothing demands focus. Everything exists in a state of balance. Time moves forward, but it does not feel like movement. It feels like a continuation of what has always been. The same cycles, the same patterns, the same gentle unfolding of moments, one into the next. Beneath the surface, the chambers continue to rest, their stillness unchanged by the passing of hours or days or years. They do not wait. They do not anticipate. They simply remain. And in that remaining, there is a kind of quiet permanence, not fixed in a rigid way, but steady in a calm, unbroken presence. Those who once entered these spaces may not return often. They may walk other paths. They may follow the rhythm of daily life near the river. But the awareness they gained does not disappear. It stays with them, softly, like a memory that does not need to be recalled. It influences how they see the land, how they move within it, how they understand the passage of time, not as something to measure, but as something to experience. The desert with its endless surface continues to shift. The wind returns lightly. Grains of sand lift, move, settle again. The patterns change. The lines soften. Everything returns to its natural flow. Nothing remains fixed on the surface, and yet, beneath it all, something does remain. Quiet, still, unchanged. The chambers hold their place. The objects remain where they were set. The air continues its calm, undisturbed presence. Everything exists exactly as it was,
and exactly as it is. The morning moves slowly toward midday. The light becomes fuller. The warmth settles more deeply into the land. And still, nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels urgent. The calm continues, steady, unbroken. The story does not move toward an end. It does not seek a conclusion. It simply continues in the same quiet way as the desert, as the river, as the passing of time. Each moment flowing into the next, each presence resting within the whole. And beneath it all, the stillness remains, holding everything gently, without change, without interruption.
The day moves forward in a quiet, steady way. The sun rises higher into the sky, but its presence does not feel overwhelming. It spreads its light evenly across the desert, touching every surface with the same calm warmth. The sand reflects this light softly. It does not shine sharply. It holds the brightness in a gentle way, allowing it to rest on its surface rather than scatter. The air feels warm now, but not heavy. It moves slowly, almost still, as if the entire landscape has settled into a peaceful pause. Nothing interrupts this feeling. Nothing breaks the rhythm. The desert continues as it always has, open, wide, and quietly complete. Beneath this calm surface, the chambers remain, their stillness unchanged, their presence steady. They do not react to the growing warmth of the day. They do not shift with the subtle movements above. They remain exactly as they were, holding their quiet balance in the same unbroken way. Inside, the air stays cool. The objects rest where they have always been. Jars, cloth, tools, each one part of a larger stillness, each one complete in its place. The markings on the walls remain soft and steady. Their shapes do not fade. Their lines do not change. They exist outside the rhythm of the day, outside the passage of light and shadow. Above, the world continues its gentle flow. Near the river, life moves forward in familiar patterns. The water glides quietly along its path. Hands lift it, carry it, use it, return it. Everything happens with the same calm repetition. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. The connection between all things becomes softer, but stronger. Not something that stands out, but something that is always present. The river moves. The desert rests. The chambers remain still. And all of it exists together, without separation. Those who live near this land feel this connection in quiet ways. They do not speak of it often. They do not try to define it, but it shapes their actions, their pace, their awareness. They move slowly. They pause often. They allow the day to unfold rather than pushing it forward. This understanding grows over time, not through teaching, not through instruction, but through presence, through living within the rhythm, day after day, year after year. The desert offers space for this understanding. Its openness allows thought to slow. Its silence allows awareness to deepen. Walking across the sand becomes something more than movement. It becomes a quiet experience where each step is felt, where each moment is noticed. The wind returns again, lightly. It lifts small grains of sand, carries them a short distance, and lets them fall. The surface changes, not dramatically, but enough to remind that nothing on the surface remains the same. And yet, beneath it, everything remains. The chambers continue to hold their stillness. They do not need to be seen to exist. They do not need to be entered to remain complete. Their presence is steady, whether touched by light or covered by sand. Time passes, but it does not feel like passing. It feels like continuing, like a quiet flow that never stops but never rushes. The sun reaches its highest point. The light becomes fuller. The warmth settles more deeply into the land. But still, the calm remains. Nothing is disturbed. Nothing is out of place. Everything exists in balance. The people who move through this landscape carry that balance with them. In their steps, in their work, in their quiet moments of rest. They do not need to seek stillness. It is already present. In the desert, in the river, in the hidden spaces beneath the sand, and within themselves. The day begins, slowly, to move toward its softer hours. The light will change again. The shadows will return. The air will cool. And the same gentle cycle will continue, just as it always has. The chambers will remain. The desert will shift. The river will flow. And the quiet presence of everything will continue without interruption. There is no need for change, no need for completion, only the steady unfolding of what already is. And beneath it all, the stillness holds, calm, unbroken, endless.
The light begins to soften once more. It does not fade suddenly. It eases slowly as the sun moves lower across the sky. The brightness becomes warmer, gentler, spreading across the desert in long, quiet layers. The sand reflects this change. Its surface takes on a softer tone, as if it is settling into the calm of the coming evening. The air shifts again. The warmth remains, but it begins to loosen, to release its hold, allowing a cooler stillness to return. Nothing moves quickly. Nothing changes all at once. Everything unfolds in its own time. Beneath the surface, the chambers remain untouched. Their stillness continues, steady, complete. They do not follow the light. They do not respond to the changing air. They exist in a quiet state that does not depend on the day. Inside, the objects rest as they always have. The same careful placement, the same calm balance. The markings on the walls remain soft and silent. They do not ask to be read. They do not change. They simply hold their presence, just as they were left. Above, the desert continues its slow rhythm. The wind moves lightly, brushing across the surface of the sand. It reshapes the patterns, smooths the edges, creates new lines that will soon fade again. Nothing remains fixed, and yet nothing is lost. Everything becomes part of the ongoing movement, part of the quiet flow that never stops. Near the river, the day begins to settle. The sounds of activity grow softer, movements slow. The steady work of the day comes to a gentle close. Water is gathered, tools are set aside, voices become quieter, resting in the calm of the evening. The connection between the river and the desert feels closer now. As the light softens, the difference between movement and stillness becomes less clear. Everything begins to share the same quiet tone, the same gentle presence. Those who walk this land feel it again, that subtle shift as the world moves from day into evening. A moment where everything slows,
where the space between thoughts grows wider, where the need to act fades into a quiet sense of being. They may walk toward the desert, not for any purpose, not for any task, but simply to be within that stillness, to feel the openness, to allow the quiet to settle around them. The sand beneath their feet is warm but cooling. The air is calm. The sky stretches wide above, slowly changing color. Soft gold, pale orange, fading into deeper shades of blue. The transition is gentle. There is no clear moment when day becomes night, only a gradual blending one into the other. The chambers beneath the sand remain part of this quiet transition, even without change. Their stillness mirrors the stillness above. Their calm reflects the calm of the land. Though unseen, they are not separate. They are part of the same presence, part of the same quiet whole. The wind slows again. The surface of the desert becomes smoother. The patterns left by the day soften, becoming less defined, less visible. Everything begins to settle. As the sun lowers further, the first hints of evening appear. The light becomes softer still. The shadows stretch longer. The air cools, and the land prepares to return to night. This cycle has repeated for countless years, without interruption, without change, and within it the chambers have remained. Through every morning, through every night, through every passing moment, holding their stillness, holding their quiet balance. Nothing within them has shifted, nothing has been lost. Everything continues just as it was. The people who sense this do not feel separate from it. They feel part of the same rhythm, the same quiet flow. They do not seek to understand everything. They allow the presence of the land to be enough, the presence of the moment to be complete. As the last light of the day begins to fade, the desert takes on a deeper calm. The sky darkens slowly. The stars begin to return, one by one, in their quiet, steady way. The air cools further. The wind becomes soft, almost still, and everything settles again into silence. The chambers beneath remain, unchanged, unmoved, their stillness as complete as it has always been. And above them, the desert rests. The river flows. The sky opens into night. Everything continues. Nothing ends. Nothing begins. Only the gentle unfolding of what has always been and always will be.
Night settles once more across the desert. It does not arrive with force. It comes quietly, gently, as the last traces of light fade into the horizon. The sky deepens into a soft, endless darkness, and the stars return in their steady, familiar patterns. The air cools again. The warmth of the day lifts slowly, leaving behind a calm, balanced stillness. The sand releases the heat it held, and the surface becomes smooth beneath the quiet sky. Nothing disturbs this moment. Nothing calls attention. Everything rests. The desert stretches outward in every direction, wide and open, holding the silence without effort. The wind moves only slightly now, brushing across the surface in soft, almost unnoticeable motions. Beneath this stillness, the chambers remain, unchanged. Their quiet presence continues, untouched by the passing of day or night. They do not feel the cooling air. They do not see the stars above. They simply exist in a steady, unbroken calm. Inside, the air remains still. The objects hold their places. Jars stand quietly. Cloth rests in its folded form. Tools lie undisturbed.
The markings on the walls remain soft and silent, their shapes unchanged, their presence steady. Nothing moves, nothing shifts. Everything is complete, exactly as it is. Above, the stars continue their slow movement, too gentle to notice in a single moment, yet constant over time. Their light falls evenly across the land, touching the sand, the distant stone, and the quiet horizon. The same light has fallen here for countless nights. The same steady glow has watched over the desert, over the river, over the hidden spaces beneath the surface. Time passes, but it does not feel like passing. It feels like a quiet continuation, like a breath that never fully ends, only softens and begins again. The people who rest near this land feel the calm of the night. Their movements slow, their thoughts settle. The quiet spreads gently through everything, without effort, without intention. Some may sit beneath the sky, some may lie still, listening to the faint movement of the air. There is no need for words, no need for action, only the presence of the moment, complete and undisturbed. The desert becomes something more than a place. It becomes a feeling, a deep, quiet stillness that holds everything gently, without change, without expectation. The chambers beneath the sand reflect this stillness. They hold it, preserve it, not as something separate, but as part of the same calm that exists above. Even when unseen, they remain connected to the land, to the sky, to the passage of time. Nothing is isolated. Everything belongs. The wind slows further. The sand settles. The surface becomes smooth once more. The traces of the day fade away, leaving only the quiet presence of the night. The stars continue their steady paths. Their light remains constant, unchanging, a quiet reminder that some things move while others remain still, and both are part of the same gentle rhythm. Beneath it all, the chambers rest, their stillness complete, their presence calm and certain. They do not need to be found. They do not need to be understood. They simply are. And in that simple existence, there is a kind of peace, a sense that nothing is missing, nothing is unfinished, everything is whole, exactly as it is. The night deepens. The air cools further. The silence becomes even more complete. There are no sudden sounds, no sharp movements, only the soft presence of the land, resting as it always has. The desert holds everything gently. The river continues its quiet flow in the distance. The sky stretches wide above, and beneath it all, the hidden spaces remain, calm, still, unbroken. Time continues, but it no longer feels separate from the stillness. It feels like part of it, a quiet motion within a larger calm. The night moves slowly toward morning, but there is no need to notice, no need to follow. Everything will unfold just as it always has, softly, gently, without interruption. And in this moment, everything rests. The desert, the sky, the unseen spaces below, all held together in one quiet, endless calm.
The stillness continues, unbroken, gentle, and complete. Night rests fully over the desert now. The sky stretches wide, filled with quiet stars that hold their places without change. Their light is soft, steady, and distant, touching the land without disturbing it. The air is cool, not cooled, just calm, settled, carrying a quiet that feels deep and endless. The sand lies smooth beneath this sky. The small traces left by the wind have softened.
The surface appears almost untouched, as though it has returned to a natural state of rest. Nothing calls attention. Nothing moves with urgency. Everything exists in a slow, steady balance. Beneath the surface, the chambers remain, their presence unchanged, their stillness complete. They do not follow the rhythm of night or day. They do not shift with the passing of time. They remain exactly as they are, holding their quiet state without interruption. Inside, the air is still. The objects rest. The markings remain. Nothing has been altered. Nothing has been lost. Everything continues, just as it was. Above, the stars continue their quiet paths. Their movement is too slow to notice, their presence too constant to question. They simply exist, as they always have. The desert below mirrors that same calm, a vast space of silence, a place where time feels softer, less defined, almost still. Those who are awake beneath this sky feel it, not as something new, not as something unexpected, but as something familiar, a quiet presence that has always been there, waiting to be noticed. They do not need to move. They do not need to think. They simply rest within the stillness, allowing it to surround them, to hold them gently. The river flows in the distance. Its sound is faint, barely noticeable, but steady, a quiet reminder that movement continues even within stillness. Everything exists together, the flowing water, the resting sand, the hidden chambers below, the wide, silent sky above. None separate, none disconnected, all part of the same gentle presence. Time continues to move, but it does not feel like movement. It feels like a quiet unfolding, like a breath that never fully ends, like a moment that stretches, soft and endless. The night deepens further. The stars remain. The air grows slightly cooler. The wind moves just enough to shift a few grains of sand, then settles again. Everything returns to stillness. The chambers beneath the surface remain untouched. Their quiet presence continues, holding everything exactly as it was and exactly as it is. Nothing within them changes. Nothing within them fades. They exist outside the movement above, outside the rhythm of day and night, and yet they are part of it, connected in a quiet, unspoken way. The people who feel this connection do not try to explain it. They do not try to hold on to it. They allow it to exist just as it is, because they understand, slowly, gently, that not everything needs to be understood. Some things are meant to be felt. Some things are meant to remain quiet. The desert offers that space, that openness, that calm, where nothing is required, where everything is enough, exactly as it is. The night begins slowly to soften again. Not yet morning, but the slightest change begins, a quiet shift in the darkness, almost impossible to notice. The stars remain. The air stays still, but something moves, gently, toward the next moment.
toward the same cycle that has always continued, the same quiet rhythm, unbroken, endless. Beneath it all, the chambers remain, still, calm, unchanged, holding their quiet presence without need, without movement. And above them, the desert rests. The sky stretches wide. The river flows. Everything continues exactly as it always has. There is no beginning, no ending, only the gentle presence of what is. And in that presence, everything remains, soft, silent, endless.
The quiet grows even softer now. Not because anything has changed, but because everything has settled more deeply into itself. The night feels fuller, calmer, as if every part of the land has found its place and has no need to move. The stars remain above, their light steady, their presence unchanged. They do not hurry across the sky. They do not draw attention. They simply exist, just as they always have, watching over the desert in a quiet, endless way. The air is still, almost completely. Only the faintest movement can be felt, a soft shift that comes and goes without leaving a trace. The sand lies smooth, undisturbed, its surface holding no clear signs of movement, no lasting marks, only a gentle, even calm. Beneath this surface, the chambers remain. Their stillness is complete. Nothing has entered, nothing has left. The quiet inside them is the same as it has always been, deep, unbroken, untouched by the passing of time. The objects within rest in their places. The jars stand as they were set. The cloth remains folded. The tools lie still. The markings on the walls continue to hold their quiet shapes, neither fading nor changing, simply existing in a calm, steady way. Above, the desert holds its silence. It does not feel empty. It feels full, but not with sound, not with movement, but with presence. A presence that does not need to be seen or heard, only felt, gently, without effort. The river continues its quiet flow in the distance. Its movement is constant, yet soft, blending into the stillness rather than breaking it. Everything exists together, stillness and motion, silence and sound, hidden and seen, all part of the same calm whole. Those who rest beneath the night sky feel this more clearly now. There is no need to think, no need to follow thoughts. They come and fade like the wind across the sand. Nothing is held, nothing is pushed away. Everything is allowed to be, just as it is. The sense of time begins to soften even more. It no longer feels like something that moves forward. It feels like something that simply is, a quiet presence, always here, always steady. The difference between moments becomes less clear. One moment blends into the next, without edge, without separation. The desert holds this feeling, the wide openness, the endless horizon, the quiet sky. All of it allows time to settle into something softer, something less defined. Beneath it all, the chambers continue to rest. Their stillness mirrors this same feeling, a state where nothing needs to change, where everything remains complete, without effort, without movement. The connection between above and below becomes almost invisible now, not because it is gone, but because it is so natural, so quiet, that it no longer stands out. It simply exists, like the air, like the space between things. The night continues, the stars remain, the air stays cool and still, the sand rests. Nothing asks for attention,
Nothing needs to be noticed. Everything is already complete. The quiet deepens further, not in a way that adds anything, but in a way that removes what is not needed, leaving only what is simple, what is calm, what is steady. The river flows, the desert rests, the chambers remain, all part of one continuous presence. The sense of story begins to fade, not ending, not disappearing, but softening, becoming less important than the feeling of the moment itself, because here, in this stillness, there is no need for movement, no need for progression, only the quiet presence of being. The night slowly begins to shift again, so gently that it can barely be felt, a soft change deep within the darkness, the first hint that morning will come, though it is far away. The stars remain, the air remains still, but the cycle continues, as it always has, without effort, without interruption. Beneath it all, the chambers remain, unchanged, unmoving, their quiet presence steady and complete. And above them, the desert stretches wide, calm, silent, endless. Everything rests exactly as it is. And in that rest, there is nothing more to seek, nothing more to follow, only the quiet, gentle presence of what has always been.
The quiet remains. It does not grow. It does not fade. It simply continues, steady, unchanged, like a calm breath that has no beginning and no end. The night still holds the desert in its soft, gentle stillness. The stars above remain in place, their light faint but constant, spreading across the wide sky without effort. They do not seem distant now. They feel like part of the same calm presence that rests over the land. The air is cool and still. There is no movement strong enough to be noticed. Only a soft, almost invisible shift, like the slightest whisper that comes and goes without leaving a trace. The sand lies quiet beneath this sky, smooth, unbroken. No lines remain, no marks. Everything has settled into a simple, even surface, as though the desert has released all signs of movement and returned to rest. Beneath this quiet surface, the chambers remain, unchanged, unmoving. Their stillness is complete. Inside them, nothing stirs. The air remains untouched. The objects rest exactly as they were placed, neither shifting nor fading. The markings on the walls remain soft and silent, holding their shapes in a calm, unchanging way. Nothing within the chambers asks to be remembered. Nothing reaches outward. Everything simply exists, quietly, completely, without need. Above, the desert holds the same calm. The river continues its distant flow, too soft to break the silence, too steady to ever stop. Everything moves, and yet nothing feels like movement. Everything rests, and yet nothing feels still in a fixed way. It is a quiet balance, where change and stillness exist together without conflict. Those who lie beneath the sky feel this more deeply now. There is no need to follow thoughts, no need to hold on to time. The sense of before and after begins to soften. Moments no longer feel separate. They blend into one another, gently, like the shifting of sand, like the fading of light. The desert offers no edges, no sharp beginnings, no clear endings, only a wide open presence where everything exists together. The chambers beneath the sand reflect this same presence. They hold a moment that has not passed, a stillness
that has not changed, and yet they are part of the same continuous flow as everything above. There is no separation, only layers, resting quietly, one upon another. The stars continue their slow paths, unseen in their movement, unnoticed in their change, but always present, always steady. The air remains cool, the sand remains still. The silence deepens, not by adding more, but by holding less, less thought, less movement, less need for anything to happen. Everything is already here. Everything is already complete. The river flows. The desert rests. The chambers remain. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken away. The sense of time softens further. It no longer feels like something that moves forward. It feels like something that simply holds everything together, quietly, gently, without effort. The night begins very slowly to shift, not in a visible way, not in a way that draws attention, but in a subtle change, deep within the stillness. The faintest suggestion of morning, far beyond the horizon, not yet seen, not yet felt, but present. The stars remain, the darkness remains, and yet something moves softly within the calm. The cycle continues as it always has, without sound, without urgency, without interruption. Beneath it all, the chambers remain, their stillness complete, their presence unchanged, holding their quiet place within the endless calm. And above them, the desert stretches wide, silent, open, endless. Everything rests, everything continues, and there is nothing more to follow, nothing more to reach, only the quiet presence of what has always been and will always remain.
The stillness lingers. It does not drift away with the passing of the night, nor does it deepen any further. It remains exactly as it is, calm, steady, without need for change. The sky above holds its quiet darkness. The stars continue to rest in their places, their soft light barely touching the wide desert below. They do not flicker with urgency. They do not shift in ways that can be noticed. They simply remain, constant, gentle, patient. The air is cool. It carries no strong movement. Only the faintest trace of motion passes through it, so light it feels like nothing at all. The sand beneath remains smooth, no clear lines, no visible marks, only a quiet surface, even and still, as though the desert has settled into a deep and restful pause. Beneath this calm surface, the chambers remain, unchanged, unmoving. Their stillness does not follow the rhythm above. It does not shift with the passing of hours. It exists, complete, untouched, just as it has always been. Inside, the air remains perfectly still. The objects do not move. The jars stand. The cloth rests. The tools remain where they were placed. The markings on the walls hold their quiet shapes, soft and steady, unchanged by time. Nothing asks to be seen. Nothing calls for attention. Everything simply exists, without effort, without movement. Above, the desert continues its quiet presence. The river flows far in the distance, its movement soft, blending into the stillness rather than standing apart from it. Everything is connected, not in a way that can be traced or explained, but in a way that can be felt, quietly, without thought.
Those who rest beneath the sky feel this connection more fully now. There is no sense of distance, no feeling of separation. The sky, the sand, the unseen spaces below, all seem to exist together as one continuous presence. Thoughts come less often, and when they do, they pass gently, without holding. Like the wind, like the shifting of sand, they appear and fade without leaving anything behind. Time softens even more. It no longer feels like a path. It feels like a space, a quiet space where everything rests, where nothing is lost, where nothing is moving away. The difference between night and morning begins to fade, not because they are the same, but because the transition between them is so gentle, so slow, that it becomes almost unnoticeable. The stars remain, the darkness remain, and yet something changes, quietly, deep within the horizon. A faint light begins to form, far away, not yet visible, but present in a soft and subtle way. The desert does not respond, it does not shift, it does not awaken suddenly, it simply continues, calm, steady, unchanged. Beneath it all, the chambers remain, holding their stillness, holding their quiet presence. They do not wait for light, they do not respond to the passing of night, they simply remain as they are. And in that remaining, there is a kind of quiet certainty, a sense that nothing needs to change, nothing needs to become something else. Everything is already complete. The air begins to shift just slightly. A soft movement returns, barely felt, like a breath that passes through without being noticed. The sand holds its smooth surface. The sky holds its fading stars, and the horizon begins very slowly to soften. The night moves gently toward morning, not as a clear moment, not as a sudden change, but as a slow blending, one state becoming another, without separation. The quiet remains, the stillness remains, everything continues exactly as it is, even as it changes. Beneath the sand, the chambers remain untouched, their stillness unbroken, their presence calm and steady. And above them, the desert stretches wide, endless, silent, complete. There is nothing more to uncover, nothing more to follow, only the gentle presence of what is and what has always been.
The horizon begins to glow, very softly. It is not yet light, it is not yet morning, but the darkness no longer feels complete. A faint, gentle shift appears in the distance, a quiet blending of night into something softer. The stars remain. They do not disappear all at once. They linger, calm, steady, slowly fading into the changing sky. The desert does not react. It does not awaken suddenly. It remains as it is, still, open, resting in its quiet balance. The air carries a slight change, not warmth, not movement, just a subtle softness, as though the stillness itself is preparing to shift. The sand lies smooth beneath this quiet sky. Its surface holds no clear memory of the night. No marks remain. No traces linger. Everything has settled into a calm, even presence. Beneath it, the chambers remain, unchanged, still. Their quiet existence continues without interruption. Inside, nothing has moved. The air is the same. The objects remain. The markings hold their place. Everything is exactly as it has always been. Above, the sky slowly lightens, not with brightness, but with softness. The deep darkness gives way to gentle shades, pale and quiet,
spreading slowly across the horizon. The stars fade further, one by one, without urgency, without notice. The desert remains silent. The wind has not yet returned. The air holds a calm that feels deep and steady. The river continues its distant flow. Its sound remains soft, almost part of the silence itself. Everything exists together. Nothing stands apart. Nothing draws attention. Those who rest beneath the sky may begin to feel the shift, not as a clear moment, not as a change that can be pointed to, but as a quiet awareness, a gentle movement within the stillness. The difference between night and morning becomes less important. Only the presence of the moment remains. The chambers beneath the sand continue to hold their stillness. They are not part of the light. They are not part of the dark. They exist beyond both, in a calm that does not change. And yet they belong to the same world, the same quiet rhythm, the same endless flow. The horizon grows a little brighter. Soft tones begin to form, pale gold, light blue, gentle shades that spread slowly, without edge, without direction. The desert receives this light quietly. It does not reflect it strongly. It holds it softly, allowing it to rest on its surface. The air begins to warm just slightly. The coolness of the night begins to lift, not suddenly, but gradually. Everything moves toward morning, but nothing rushes, nothing pushes forward. The transition remains calm, steady, unbroken. The sand remains smooth. The sky continues to open. The river flows. And beneath it all, the chambers remain, unseen, unchanged, holding their quiet presence. The people who feel this moment do not need to act. They do not need to move. They simply exist within it, quietly, gently, without effort. Thoughts are few. Movement is slow. Everything is allowed to be, just as it is. The sense of time continues to soften. It no longer feels like something moving from one moment to another. It feels like a single, continuous presence, stretching without end. The light grows slightly stronger, but still gentle, still calm. The stars fade further. The sky becomes clearer. The desert begins to take shape again, not as something new, but as something always present. The same land, the same quiet, the same endless calm. Beneath it all, the chambers remain, still, calm, unbroken, holding everything exactly as it is. And above them, the desert continues. The sky opens. The light returns. The cycle moves forward, without change, without end. There is nothing to reach, nothing to complete, only the quiet unfolding of what has always been. Soft, steady, endless.
The light settles gently across the desert. Morning has come, but it does not feel like a beginning. It feels like a continuation, soft and familiar, as though the night has simply changed its shape without ever leaving. The sky is pale and open. The last traces of the stars have faded. The air carries a quiet warmth, calm, balanced, steady. The sand stretches outward in every direction, smooth, endless, holding no clear mark of what has passed and no sign of what will come. Beneath this quiet surface, the chambers remain, unseen, unchanged. Their stillness continues just as it always has. The air inside them is calm. The objects rest in place. The markings remain soft and silent. Nothing has been disturbed. Nothing has been lost.
Everything remains exactly as it is. Above, the desert breathes in its slow, endless rhythm. The wind moves lightly, then fades. The river flows, steady and quiet. The sky holds its soft light without effort. Everything continues without needing to begin, without needing to end. The story has never been about discovery. It has never been about reaching something hidden or uncovering something lost. It has always been about presence, the quiet presence of the land, the gentle passage of time, the stillness that remains beneath all movement. Those who have walked here, who have paused, who have felt the calm of this place, carry nothing away. And yet something remains with them. Not a memory, not a thought, but a quiet understanding, one that does not need words, that everything continues, that nothing is truly lost, that beneath all change there is a stillness that remains, steady and complete. The desert does not hold secrets in the way one might imagine. It does not hide things away to keep them from being known. It simply allows them to rest, to exist, to remain without needing to be seen. And in that resting there is peace, a quiet, endless peace that does not ask to be found, only felt, gently, in the space between moments. The morning light grows a little brighter. The land begins its day just as it always has, but nothing feels new, nothing feels different, only continuous, only calm. The chambers beneath the sand remain where they are, holding their stillness, holding their quiet presence, part of the land, part of the time that moves without movement, part of the endless gentle rhythm of everything. The wind lifts a few grains of sand and lets them fall again. The river flows, the sky stretches wide, and the desert remains, unbroken, silent, endless. There is no final moment, no closing point, only this quiet stillness continuing without effort. And as everything rests just as it is, the story fades, not into darkness, not into silence, but into a calm that has always been there, waiting, gently, without time, endless.